welcome to today's meeting of the Economy and Skills Policy Committee. I'm the Chair, Councillor Andrew Brown, and you're all welcome, whether you're in the public gallery, which is obviously full, or indeed on the webcast. There are no fire alarms planned, so if you hear the alarm, please exit the building through the main door and go down the ramp to the right and assemble adjacent to the cathedral. It's obviously going to be a very busy meeting, so I'm going to ask if everybody, whether in the public gallery or on the committee, if they can be both respectful when speaking and listening, to stick to time and for only one person at a time to speak. That would be much appreciated. I'm going to do a round of introductions as we regularly do. So I shall start with councillors. So, Richard.
Councillor Richard Eddy.
Councillor Bartle, Vice Chair.
Councillor Cam Hayward.
Councillor Toby Wells.
Subbing, Councillor Shabalala.
Councillor Tom Menard.
Councillor Sue Collar.
And then if I can go around, and then if I can start with officers, John.
Good afternoon, my name's John Smith. I'm the Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration at the Council.
I'm Joanne Mansfield from Legal Services.
Good afternoon, my name is Alex Hearn. I'm the Director of Economy of Place at the Council.
I'm Simon Wilding. I'm the Chief Planning Officer at the Council.
Good afternoon, Patsy Mellor, Director Management of Place.
Good afternoon, Cliff Brand, Interim Head of Service, Bristol Harbour Authority.
Good afternoon, David Towns, Project Manager, Harbour.
Hello, I'm Carly Heath, Nighttime Economy Advisor at Bristol City Council.
Good afternoon, Anita Creto, Head of Economic Development, Bristol City Council.
Jason Thorne, Service Manager for City Centre and High Streets.
And Fabian, can you introduce yourself?
Councillor Fabian Burkles, St George Troopers Hill.
Hi, I'm Lauren Price, Democratic Service Officer.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We've had one substitution. Do you want to note that, Lauren?
So we had an apology sent from Councillor Ralston and substitution by Councillor Sibbs.
Thank you. Committee members, do any of you have declarations of interest to share?
Regarding item 7, I am the Vice Chair of the Public Rights of Way and Greens Committee.
7 or 8?
Item 7? Yeah.
Thank you, Cam. So, minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated, I think it was this morning. Has anybody got any questions as to the content of these, or do we regard them as a correct record? Okay, can I have a seconder for the minutes for the last meeting?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. So we're content to confirm that the records are correct. Sorry, that the minutes are a correct record, subject to no corrections on this occasion. Okay, I'll sign those later. Moving on, the Chair's announcement. So the first thing to point out is that there is an urgent item of business that has been added to the agenda, as members will have seen, and that is a petition on St Nick's Markets fees and charges. This was submitted to the Council since the publication of the agenda, but it does relate to the report that is on today's agenda, and therefore I have elected to take it, whereas normal procedure would be for it to be held over until the next meeting. The petition has secured 5,820 signatures to date, 3,435 from Bristol residents. So we will hold that debate later in the meeting. What I am suggesting is that we take that immediately before the item, agenda item 8, which is the item to which it relates. So we will have, shortly we'll have public forum, then we'll have the item with regards to Stoke Lodge, then we'll have a break, and then we'll have the petition debate followed by the debate on the agenda item itself. There are a number of other things to draw the members' attention to. A number of officer decision notices that have been approved since the last meeting. One that has a bearing on a later item as well, and that is with regards to Pero's Bridge. And there was an approval of £200,000 to undertake initial work on repairing it, following issues identified for a principal inspection undertaken in July. The broader financing of that work is the subject of the later paper. There's 3 other officer decision notices to report. The Resilient Room Sustainable Drainage Retrofit Project. This is £438,265 to construct sustainable drainage systems to improve surface water flooding, amenity and biodiversity at the Glenfroom and Briarwood primary schools in the city. The Bristol Avon Flood Strategy, and there's been an award for development of a full business case. That is £6,697,696 to Jacobs UK to lead on the work in developing that full business case for the flood strategy. And the final decision notice to report is with regard to pontoon power to the harbour moorings, and that's for £105,352.88 to Rollick Services Limited to continue and to continue with the work and completing of the upgrade pontoon power points at our moorings. The final couple of items I wanted to draw members' attention to: the West of England Combined Authorities Local Growth Plan, which is now called the Growth Strategy, is due to be launched tomorrow, which I'm sure will be of interest to members. And also, with regards to the West of England Combined Authority, the Mayor has commenced the process of working towards a spatial development strategy with a series of bilateral meetings, including one with Bristol City Council last week. So those are my announcements for today. So on to the public forum. So we have up to 30 minutes available for the public forum. We have a substantial number of questions in, and we also have a number of statements. Although more people, I think, have indicated that they will be here for their questions rather than statements. So I'm going to work through the questions. I'm going to rotate initially to ensure that each of the subjects that have been asked, questions have been raised about, has at least one question asked before then going to work through them in chronological order from the top. And we'll see how far we get. I'm initially minded to allow 20 minutes to this so that we've got time to move on to some of the statements at least. But we'll see how we go. If people can be brief and succinct in asking any supplementary questions that they may have, that's so much the better. We'll be able to get through more from the gallery. So, doing a time check to start. Right. The first person I've got who's indicated that they were intending to be here with a question was Martin Rands. Martin, are you here? It does not look like you are. Okay, I shall move on to Thomas Duff, and this is a question on Stoke Lodge. Have you seen the answer? I appreciate that the answers to these questions were published this morning, and not everybody may have had an opportunity to see the answers. Have you seen the written answer, and do you have a supplementary?
I have seen the answer, and I do have a supplementary. The answer says there was no decision to remove the playing fields from the curtilage, which relates to the Article 4 direction we're talking about. But the Appendix A of the officer's report says there was consideration if the fields were in the curtilage, and decided in December 2018 they were not. but then it goes on to say there was an earlier letter that said they were. So surely this means there was a decision to remove from the curtilage.
Whether or not something forms part of the curtilage is a legal consideration, and it was, if there may have been an earlier view, but ultimately it's the final view that matters, and that final view was taken that confirmed that it was not part of the curtilage, and as such it was not a decision to remove it because it didn't form part of it ever.
That seems surprising.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Moving on then. The next questioner I have on my list is John. You've already got the microphone, John. Do you want to ask, have you seen your answer, and do you have a supplementary?
I have. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I hope that the committee is aware that it is an absolute legal requirement under the 1972 Local Government Act that any disposal of open space, which Baltic Wharf is without any doubt, irrespective of whether this space is accessible to the public or not, must be advertised in the local paper for 2 consecutive weeks, and that any objections are properly considered, and that a recent High Court case quashed a planning consent because the council had failed to do this. As the council has failed to do this in this case, the disposal of Baltic Wharf is illegal or unlawful. What do the committee think about this?
I can't see any colleagues put their hand up, so I'm happy to come in. So the advice that we've got and the position set out here is clearly that it doesn't constitute public open space, so that it isn't illegal.
It does, if you look at the definition without any doubts. And the High Court
Thank you, John. You've had your supplementary, and I'm going to be strict today because there are so many people in the public gallery. So I am going to skip ahead because I want to make sure, as I said earlier, that we do take questions representing everything that's on the agenda and that people have submitted questions about. So I'm going to skip ahead to Gemma Steer with regards to St Nick's Market. Is Gemma here? I will be coming back, but I made it clear at the start that I wanted to make sure that we did cover all the topics that people had submitted questions about.
Hi. My question is basically, should the fees get increased at St Nicholas Market? That would almost mean some certain closure for some businesses, including mine. How can Bristol City Council guarantee diversity within the market and bring in new business as diverse as it is now?
Okay, thank you. Can I pass to one of the team, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, in terms of the diversity of the stall holders at the markets team works with traders, but also when there are applications to take on stalls within the market, should there become vacancies. That's part of the decision that the markets team makes in relation to the charter.
Thank you. So my pen has decided to play out, which is great. So moving back then to Jill Tarleton with regards to Baltic Wharf.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my question that you have in fact valued the Baltic Wharf land as a caravan park before the time of disposal for £1.6 million. But legally you are required to value the land at its best consideration at the time of its disposal, not necessarily at its current use. Does the committee agree if you had valued the land with planning permission for 166 luxury flats, it would in fact be worth between £8 and £15 million? If so, you will have given away millions of pounds of Bristol taxpayers' money and acted unlawfully. Does this committee think this is acceptable?
So hopefully you've seen the answer. So our advice is that, and we went and got an external valuation on the issue of best consideration, is that the basis we've done it is perfectly valid and legally compliant.
I don't accept that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have Helen Powell, who's asked 2 questions with regards to Stoke Lodge. So, Helen, you have up to 2 supplementaries. Have you seen the answer? Sorry, I've not been asking this of recent questioners, but have you seen the answer provided so far?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
And have you got a supplementary, or indeed 2?
Yes, so on the first one, there's a slightly Kafkaesque response to it, but my supplementary question would be, Article 4 directions are often made for the benefit of a wider area, are they not? Isn't that the point?
National policy requires it to be for the smallest area possible.
That's the area that it applies to, not the benefit of the well-being of the community.
I'm just telling you what the policy says.
Okay, and have you second supplementary?
Okay. The second one, just towards the end of the response, actually admits that the setting of the listed building is a relevant planning matter, which we don't find anywhere in the officer report, do we?
It's very clear, the answer, that it may be a relevant matter, particularly in planning application decisions. For the Article 4 consideration, the permitted development order is very clear what the threshold or the distinctive consideration is. It's whether or not the curtilage that defines whether something has permitted development rights or not.
Thank you. Moving on to Jane Labas. Hopefully I've said that right. Is Jane here? She's not able to make it. Okay. Lance Diamond. So Lance, you had 2 questions in, so you have up to 2 supplementaries.
Hello, yes, I have 2 questions. The first question, the council has said that in response to the risk of losing revenue from vacant units, one mitigation strategy is to communicate with businesses to get advance warning. Do the council consider that traders who feel they're being pushed out by punitive fee increases are likely to engage in communication or provide advance notice?
Yeah.
Thank you. The council would recommend early engagement with the markets team if a business were considering terminating their licence because of financial difficulties, and also to ascertain if any support is available to them to assist them to remain at the market.
Question 2. The council has also stated that its long-term aim is to maintain a full market by attracting the right calibre of trader. Could the council clarify what it means by the right calibre of trader?
So that comment that you refer to is included within the professional comments section of the committee report and not within the main body of the committee report. So as detailed in the committee report, the economic development team's objectives for the market include providing flexible trading space, supporting new and small business within an incubation environment, being well managed, safe, clean, and to keep attracting visitors and traders, and to be financially sustainable and support the case for future investment.
Okay, thank you. I am going to go back now to question 8 from Anne Hughes Devereux.
Thank you. Is the committee aware that the 1972 Local Government Act requires that the disposal must be for the best consideration reasonably available at the time of disposal? The so-called independent valuation has not valued this land as a development site with full planning permission for 166 luxury harborside properties, which represents the best consideration. Between 6 and £12 million, greater than the presented valuation, and therefore contravenes the 1972 Act and is contrary to the Supreme Court decision against Shropshire Council in 2023. Can you please answer?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm not sure if you've seen the written answer, but just to summarise it briefly, we have had external qualified RICS valuers advice on what's best consideration, and our advice is that the valuation and the amount paid meets the requirement for best consideration.
So I am going to move on. I just on this issue, I keep hearing the word luxury flats associated with what's proposed in Baltic Wharf. I don't believe they are luxury flats. It's 166 flats, including 66 affordable homes for people in need in this city. But sorry, that's a slight interjection. I'm going to move on to Councillor John Goulandras, if he is here. He is not. Okay, in that case, I'm going to skip on because I'm conscious that the questions I've taken with regards to Stoke Lodge have been largely on one side of that particular issue, and I'm conscious I've not taken any questions from the other side. So I'm going to go on to question 28, Sandra Fryer from the Governors. And Sandra, you had actually submitted three questions. So if you can wait on the microphone. So you've submitted 3 questions, and have you seen the answers? You can have up to 2 supplementaries.
I've seen the answers, thank you. And I would like to ask 2 supplementaries, one on question 28 and one on question 29. On question 28, talking about the impact of an Article 4 direction on our school, I want to ask the committee, how would they, or have they thought about reconciling restricting access to education facilities with Bristol's commitment to supporting high-performing schools, such as Cottam, that serve diverse communities? So that's the question saying, are you clear about the impact that this might have if we can't use our playing fields because of this Article 4 direction? And then the next question, do you want me to go on?
I mean, I think all members will be aware of the considerations and consequences of decision making today. So that's a short answer.
So the second question we asked was about the costs of applying an Article 4. The costs that the officers' report deal with is particularly concerning the cost of if we put the fence up and if it were to have to come down. But we've put to you in the question that there may be an alternative cost, because if we cannot run our school playing fields as we need to keep our students safe and secure, we would need alternatives. So my question is, will the City Council collaborate with us on a future alternative proposal that would enable us to go forward on our site?
Thank you, Chair. So I think while the paper today is very much in the Council's capacity as planning authority, I'm sure the Council, in its capacity as an education authority, wants to have a positive discussion with all of our schools about their future.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so I'm going to go back now and I'm going to now run through the remaining questions I've got as far as I can until 2:32, and then move to statements. So, Anita Bennett, I think I saw you in the gallery. Did I? Yep. Have you seen the written answer, and do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I have seen the written answer, and I'd like to also comment that it's extremely undemocratic for a public forum to receive written answers so much at the last minute. This is a new habit that's developing in the council, and I don't think it's terribly democratic.
Just before you go on, can I just answer that? Because we have had a lot of questions to this particular committee, which officers had to spend quite considerable time on answering. I had oversight of those over the weekend. I have a regular afternoon engagement in my ward every Friday afternoon, so I wasn't able to review them then. So I reviewed them as soon as I could, and then officers published them as soon as they could following that review. So I'll take that on the chin, but it's in part down to the quantity of questions that have been asked for this particular Economy and Skills Committee. Otherwise, ideally, I would have had them published last week as well.
Thank you for clarifying the recent situation that you were in. I just noticed that this is developing more and more as a habit of the Council, the public forum. So because the Council had not received the best price for a site with planning permission, does this mean that this is going to be referred to the Secretary of State because it's hugely undervalued? And do you think it's correct to privatize our assets by disposing of the land to commercial interests at a fraction of their value, their market value? We could have decided to have a car park there at Baltic Wharf, in which case we might be getting £10 a week. And is that how we would then value that land? This is a real giveaway. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just refer back to the earlier comments. We instructed a professional valuer, a RICS qualified surveyor who's considered what the best valuation for the site is. And so, no, we aren't planning to refer it to the Secretary of State.
Thank you very much. So, moving on, next person on my list is Lynn Hamby. Is Lynn here? Have you seen the answer, and have you got a supplementary?
Yes, Chair, I have seen the answer, and I do have a supplementary question. It said that it was in the written part, these abstentions. But, you know, abstentions should be reported similarly across all statistics, in my opinion. So I'd like to ask that if abstentions and partial agreement are not accurately reported, how can the Council ensure that its survey analysis truly reflects traders' views and is not misleading?
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Can you just repeat the question? Would you mind, your supplementary?
Yes, you implied that the abstentions, though not recorded in actual question 7, in question 6, sorry, was referred to in the written part of your report. What I'm suggesting is that all questions should have abstentions reported, whether the answers are in favour of the Council or not. So what I'm asking is, how can you ensure that the Council isn't being misled if you are not representing all the statistics in a similar fashion?
Thank you, Lynn. So just to reiterate, we've made every effort to analyse and report the data fairly. I think in the response we say there's no reason for the lack of inclusion of question 6 in the overall statistics, but we've sought to publish and be transparent around all of the feedback that we've received. Some of it may not have been included in the statistics, but we have sought to summarise the kind of text and narrative from the survey questions that we have received, and we have published those as part of the appendices.
Yes, it feels that
Sorry, I did say, sorry, Lynn, I did say earlier I was going to have to try and be strict because there's so many people here today, so we can't get into dialogue at the moment. But members will have heard your representations, obviously, and will have read your questions and statements. So that is 20 minutes on questions. So I am going to move on and give members an opportunity, members of the public, an opportunity to speak to their statements. There are a limited number of people here that have indicated that they were planning to attend, but I'm not going to get through all of them, so I'm just going to go as quickly as we can. If people can be as brief as they can in speaking to their statements and recognise that councillors will already have seen those and had them to read, that would be Great. So I'm going to start with statement number 1, Helen Powell. Helen, I know you're here.
Thank you. Your chief planner sees nothing of planning merit at Stoke Lodge. It's a council-owned heritage asset and home to Bristol's finest collection of notable and veteran trees, but apparently there's nothing there worth protecting, really. This report misleads you about the legal test. It withholds information about relevant planning matters like the impact on setting and public safety. It misdirects you to irrelevant issues and suggests you should give in to threats from developers. Coltham School is literally telling you that they plan to put up a fence that they know would not get planning permission. They plan to fence through the roots of protected trees, to cut off a listed building from its parkland and alienate the local community again, even though they signed a lease that prohibits new structures and despite the public rights of way. And for unknown reasons, this report goes out of its way to enable them. You have a right to unbiased and accurate information. This is not it.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Although I did say I was going to go through these statements in order, I feel like, again, we should hear from both sides of this from the public forum. So the first statement I can see in support of the school's position is Sandra Fryer's, and there may be others, but I'm looking at this. Hey, so Sandra, do you want to briefly speak to your statement, and then I'll go back and go through the rest of the statements.
Thank you. I'm here, as is Jo Butler, our head teacher, and students and our planning consultant. I just want to say I read with a massively heavy heart the statements and questions this morning and the personal attacks that continue. When the judge found that these are school playing fields and that they should be left to Cottam to manage as we see fit and appropriate, I thought we would have an opportunity to move forward. The school has developed a very complicated mobilisation plan. We've looked at the things that worked well when the fence was up before and the things that didn't work well, and we're seeking to resolve them. We have reached out in a subtle way to the campaigners, but so far all we've heard is, we'll keep fighting, we'll keep fighting. Please don't have a go at me. You had a go at me in writing. Please don't do this. I'm working here very properly with the leadership team at Cottam School on behalf of our 1,600 children who come from some of the most variable and deprived parts of the city, including many of the wards which councillors here today look after. We urge you not to apply the Article 4. We urge you to let the school get on with running its business properly. We will put the fence back up. We will do it properly and effectively, something that, if it were to have planning permission, it would meet that standard. I hope we can work with you, the council, going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So next is Dr. Stephanie French. Again, if you can speak briefly to your statement if you're here. I'm not see. Oh, go on.
Yes. In my statement, I described how Stoke Lodge Playing Field is definitely and always has been in the curtilage of listed Stoke Lodge House since the house was built. It was covertly delisted behind the closed doors of BCC's planning department, and anybody who might have disagreed with that change was excluded from the deliberations. So Bristol City Council's planning department really needs to stop being quite so secretive, and they must be seen to adhere to the Nolan principles for public life, with their actions able to be seen to be free from bias. So we ask for an Article 4 direction so that the due process of an open, honest and informed debated planning application for anything affecting the land and house can be restored. That planning application for a fence might mean that the fence is built, but there would at least have been an application and a debate. Doing this does not favour one party over another, and the threat of costs to prevent this should not be used by planning officers to bully and intimidate councillors. That's an outrage.
Thank you. Judith Brandt. Is Judith here? Is Judith here? Oh. Again, if you can speak briefly to your statement, we'll see how many more we can get in over the next few minutes.
To my mind, this is an untrustworthy and unbalanced report. There are huge omissions in it. As stated before, there's misdirection. The nature of the school is completely irrelevant, otherwise characterise the community in that report as well. It's an outright lie that the visual amenity with regards to the public rights of way has never been raised. It has been raised several times. I would demand that officers release the facts behind the removal of curtilage that put us here today, and ask as landlord for you to step up and remove the covert cameras and stop the erection of any structures, particularly until the public rights of way have been sorted out. And that's it.
Thank you. Fiona Evans, you've got a statement entitled Environmental Concerns. Is Fiona here? Not here? Okay, so we move on to Gemma. Gemma Steer, Grandma's Toy Shop. I think, Gemma, did you speak earlier? Oh. Are you happy not to speak? Is that what you're saying? Okay. In which case, I shall move on to the next one on my list is Anna Capel. Thank you, Gemma.
I don't want to repeat some of what's already been said, so I'll try and précis what I've put here. Again, please don't be intimidated by this report. It is flawed. It is biased. The Equalities Impact Statement only talks about the diversity of children at the school. It doesn't talk about the elderly or less abled people around Stoke Lodge who use it and rely on it. To say there are no material planning considerations simply isn't true, as we've heard. These are textbook planning matters at Stoke Lodge. And the report paints this as just a fence. It's not just about a fence. It's about long-term development plans that could damage an irreplaceable green space. If you vote against Article 4 based on this report, you will hand complete control to the tenant, and we have lived experience of how that really does not work. Please don't let this be decided by fear of legal threats. Please put through Article 4. This is what the planning system is for, to be fair and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Keith-Smith. Is Andrew here? Yeah. Okay. This might be the last or the last but one. We shall see.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, the council report acknowledges that it's highly unlikely that the cover market and exchange hall traders could withstand a 21.15% increase. In the event that traders are unable to maintain business, traders would end their contracts and the store would become empty. Store revenue is lost. However, the increased licence fee reletting may be more difficult, and consequently the licence fees received could be lower than at the outset. The proposal is for a 36.5% increase for the covered market and 47% increase for the Exchange Hall and South Arcade, inclusive of the initial increase we've already had imposed. This is way in excess of what your own report deems unaffordable and counterproductive towards the raising of revenue. Meanwhile, there is a baffling reluctance on the part of council to take advantage of substantial revenue opportunities available in the many unused parts of the market buildings, or allow existing traders the opportunity to run their businesses the full-time hours the public rightly expect from the retail and hospitality sectors. Independent businesses provide a high level of employment per pound spent, and practically all their profits are reinvested in the local economy. Big business profits invariably disappear out of the local economy and frequently are offshore. St. Nick's is full of independent owner-operated businesses. However, if this goes ahead, they could disappear and be replaced by a rank of bland corporate businesses.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, I'm going to take one final statement, and that's Sharon Smithen on Stoke Lodge. Is Sharon here? Yeah.
Thank you. Why do we have planning? We have planning to stop harm to our environment. An Article 4 direction can be made to protect or to preserve the character of an area. It won't stop the development, but allows democratic consideration to the development. There's nothing to stop you passing and agreeing to the fence. In my opinion, it is completely inappropriate and very harmful that an ugly green industrial steel fence was constructed at Stoke Lodge. Had planning been properly required, there would have been mitigation features for the wildlife. It was distressing to see dead badgers surrounding the entry to Stoke Lodge. In my opinion, the fence is very harmful to a listed building and its setting, and this is contrary to section 66(1). The fence is visible not only from the outside, but more incredibly from the inside of Stoke Lodge. You're sitting there having a class looking at an ugly fence. It makes Stoke Lodge itself feel prison-like. It harms the actual building itself and it's one of your assets. It has a huge visual aspect, not only on that particular historical aspect, but actually opposite on the other side of the road, there is an old post office building, which dates over 100 years old. There is also historical gates immediately adjacent to. If any fencing was used, it should have been decided whether that should be heritage fencing, like it was determined when they considered the planning application for St Ursula's. This is normal fencing that one would expect to see surrounding a listed building. These are all the arguments that should have been considered had there been a proper planning application. As a council, you know how it feels when you have planning decisions taken away from you. You've suffered that with the Secretary of State doing what they've done. As a council, you ought to make arrangements so that we can have proper deliberations. No planning means no consideration of materials, no planning means harm to wildlife, no planning means harm to the setting, and no planning means harm to the surrounding historical assets. For this reason, the erection of a fence and any other developments adjacent to Stoke Lodge House must be considered by planning and article for direction made. I am not saying no to the fence. I am saying let it be considered properly by planning.
Thank you very much. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions and statements today. Apologies to those that we didn't get to, but we have all had those papers to read and review, and we will, I'm sure, take them into account when we hold this debate. You're welcome to stay for the debate. As I said earlier, the format is going to be a debate on this item, agenda item 7 now. Then we'll look to move to a comfort break ahead of then taking the petition debate and the substantive motion on St Nicholas Market. So that's the running order for the next bit of the meeting. So move on to agenda item 7, which is the Stoke Lodge Playing Fields. So it'll be introduced by Simone Wilding, the Chief Planner, and then I believe that John Smith, the Executive Director of Growth and Regen, is also going to speak to the report. Just for clarity, it's a report that asks us to consider the request from the Public Rights of Way Committee to explore the use of the Article 4 direction to remove permitted development rights. That would allow a fence around Stoke Lodge Playing Fields to be erected without the need for planning permission. It is not in and of itself a decision on Article 4 direction at this stage, because that would require substantive additional work from the team, which I'm sure they will elaborate on in their presentation and talking to the paper. So, Simone.
Thank you, Chair. So, like you said, the decision for the committee today is one of the high-level options whether or not to invest more time and money into collating the evidence for an Article 4 at Stoke Lodge. And until an Article 4 direction is made, the permitted development rights continue and exist. Such a direction can only be made on the basis of detailed evidence, and note also that such decision is a different one from deciding a planning application. Making an Article 4 direction is about taking away nationally defined permitted development rights. And there is specific national policy for this, and this is very clear that this should only be done where it is necessary to protect the local amenity and well-being of the local area. And it must be applied to the smallest geographical area possible. The expectation, therefore, is that an Article 4 is only used where there are no other, less severe ways to protect the amenity and the well-being of a local area. So in contrast, the planning application is about whether a specific development proposal should be allowed, which is decided on balance and every case considered on its own merits. So in considering whether an Article 4 is necessary, in this case, the committee needs to be particularly mindful of the Council's other powers. So specifically as a transport authority, we can keep confirmed public rights-of-way open using Highway Act powers. And the existing of this alternative, more targeted, geographic-specific means to maintain access to fields indicates that in this regard, it's not necessary to make an Article 4 direction. Now, turning to other consideration that can be part of amenity and well-being of a local area, that is visual impact and the impact on trees and nature. And again, the judgment in these areas must also be guided by the overriding principles of, is there an alternative means for managing these impacts, and judging the extent of the impacts against commonly understood planning considerations relating to amenity. So in relation to impacts on trees and wildlife, members should know that these already benefit from separate protection regimes, for example, TPOs, and legislation protecting species like badgers. With regard to visual amenity, the report highlights that the playing fields do not benefit from any of the nationally recognised designations, such as being in a conservation area or being identified as a designated heritage asset in their own right. It's therefore unlikely that sufficient robust evidence can be collated to demonstrate that this area is so special that removing nationally permitted development rights is justified on the basis of visual impact. So particularly since the government chose to use the curtilage of a listed building and not the setting as the crucial reference point in the permitted development order for establishing where the fencing is a nationally permitted right in the context of sites that have a listed building near them. So what constitutes the curtilage of the listed building at Stoke Lodge is a legal definition which has been clarified in December 2018, and it has been reported to committee at that time, so in 2018, and also published. Given the specifics of this case, the evidence burden is even higher than in other cases for two reasons. One, to disprove that this Article 4 direction isn't just a route to simply circumnavigate the High Court's decision of June. And secondly, due to the equality impacts identified on the children, the bar is higher to justify the need to use these powers. Note also that the EQIA is correct in not having identified an impact arising in connection with the alleged public rights of ways, because these are not a right at this stage, and if they were confirmed, they could be managed through the Highways Act power, as already mentioned. So it rather needs to be recognised that the land is education land, and its status as such has been confirmed in the recent judgment. All in all, this means that officers would need to spend a lot of time in gathering evidence to try and make a case where it's unlikely that a strong case can be made that would stand up to scrutiny. Doing the work would need to involve enforcement, development management, and legal officers. Therefore, this would divert resources away from being able to determine other cases across the city more quickly, including progressing pending Section 106 agreements, thereby delaying the conclusion of applications that deliver housing and affordable homes, and also delay us in pursuing more enforcement actions, for example, on HMOs. So for all these reasons, my recommendation to committee is not to pursue an Article 4 direction. And in doing so, committee can give a clear steer to all towards finding a solution through constructive dialogue.
Thank you, Simone. John.
Thank you, Chair. I am a regular user of the Stoke Lodge Playing Fields, and I don't doubt that it is frequently used and highly valued by the community. Similarly, it is, in my view, beyond doubt that Cottam is a highly valued and high-performing school. Despite a number of very expensive attempts to limit the use of Stoke Lodge playing fields as school playing fields, the legal position established by the court earlier this year is clear, that use by the school is the overriding statutory purpose. It is a point that has been consistently made in relation to Stoke Lodge that the money spent on the numerous legal proceedings at a time when the council and the school are very short of funds could have been much more productively spent. These actions have cost the council alone well in excess of £200,000 just on external legal fees. The true collective costs would be much more than double that. The advice from the Chief Planner and legal teams is clear. The Article 4 proceedings are very unlikely to be successfully made out and very likely to be successfully and expensively challenged, adding significantly to these totals. Chair, we don't say this to you and committee members to intimidate you. I'm sure that is not taken as such, but of course it is our job to point these things out. I would also support the Chief Planner's comments about the capacity within the planning team. The service is still in designated status for non-major applications, and the committee is very keen to prioritise enforcement activity, and this work would definitely have an impact on the service's ability to do that. The committee has, of course, the remit to make the decision on this point, and it is for myself and the officer team to provide clear advice on the merits and consequences of doing so, and to implement the committee's decision. And I just confirm that we would do that.
Thank you, John. Thank you again, Simone. I'm going to suggest that we maybe take a phase of questions, if there are any questions that people have of officers in terms of clarification or or with regards to the report, before we then maybe move on to the actual debate and start expressing our own views on the subject. And I can see Councillor Reddy has put up his hand straight away.
Simone, in your report, I'm going to pick up a point raised by a member of the public. You referred to the protected characteristics of the pupil from Cottam schools, but you didn't refer to any protected characteristics of the people who relish using the heritage site at Stoke Lodge. They may be elderly, they may actually be disabled, as such they're protected. Why didn't you do this?
Like I said in my brief introduction, there are currently no confirmed rights. The status of the land is a private land, and therefore there are no public rights to it. Should they be confirmed through the public right-of-way, a separate process that is going on, then we have powers to make sure we can safeguard those rights and safeguard and therefore make sure that there would be no impact arising on those public rights of way. And that's why and I have debated this long and hard with our equalities team as well and the legal team. That's why there is no impact that needs to be taken into account with regards to the paths, the alleged public rights of way.
Some might regard that as sophistry, but I respect what you say. My second point is clarity. It's to confirm something in public, which I asked you in our briefing before. Can you confirm that the 2018 approach regarding the curtilage of Stoke Lodge affecting the surrounding fields, that was an interpretation, legal interpretation, not a change of policy?
Yes, it was in a way a confirmation, maybe I would call it a confirmation of the legal position. That the legal position is that the fence is outside the curtilage of the listed building, and therefore permitted development rights exist. And like I said, this was publicly also referred to and debated in a previous planning application decision that was decided in 2018 and published as part of that. And also because the previous enforcement case was closed on the same basis. So it's not new that that interpretation, and not, well, it's stronger than an interpretation, that confirmation and of that legal basis has been around for many years now.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Are there any other questions? Tom, is that you indicating, or are you twiddling your pen?
Indicating. One thing I just wanted to check to start with was the local green space designation that the inspectorate has recommended removal of. So has that been agreed to? Just wanted to clarify that by the council.
Okay. The way the local plan process works is that when the inspector asks you to make a modification, you haven't really got any choice. And therefore, we have, I suppose, agreed to it in the sense that we have put back our response, which is also published on the website now, which is basically taken away the previous classification that we had, and instead all of these sites that had the local green space specification have now been identified as reserved green spaces.
Thank you. It's just helpful to understand the process. And so the process of that, because you can say no, but the potential impact of that is the local plan potentially falls, right, and doesn't make it through the examination. But just in terms of how that decision was made at an officer level? Was there political input into that decision? How has that worked in terms of that response that's gone back to the planning inspectorate?
I suppose it was largely an officer decision as such, which was reported to members of the local plan working group. But like I said, there isn't much of a choice, because I suppose if you did say no, we refuse to make this change that the inspector tells you have to make in order to find your plan sound, you would be risking of losing, not getting your whole plan adopted, and surely that's far too much a price to pay.
My question is just about process. It's not about the rest of it. I just want to understand process really, really clearly, because largely made by officer, either it was made by an officer or it was made by a politician. So which was it? I just want real clarity. Sorry to labour the point here.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear, in respect of modifications requested by the inspectorate, these were considered in the round, presented to and discussed at the local plan working group, which is a cross-party group, which informed what was sent back to the inspectorate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I've got two more questions and a couple of observations. But I'm going to do probably the observations first. And I think I want to just start with planning enforcement, because it is all well and good saying you're going to spend more time and capacity on planning enforcement, but if you talk to my councillors in Froome Vale, for example, where they just had to deal with the culture gym, where they were refused planning permission, they opened anyway, and the planning department's response has been to invite them to make another planning application rather than take any formal enforcement action. It makes a bit of a mockery of the planning enforcement process and doesn't do much to give confidence to members that even if you have more time spent on planning enforcement, that's likely to be used wisely or make sure that businesses are going to follow the rules. So just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
I think absolutely we would like to take much more enforcement action. This is an area where we're really struggling with resource, and therefore, even though it may not seem much, what we've identified here, it would still have a significant impact. The particular case you raise, I don't think it was necessarily on our invitation that a further application was made.
I've seen the response, it is.
Okay, but that is a general principle. If something can be fixed through a planning application, then that needs to take precedent. Clearly, if that doesn't lead to a satisfactory outcome, then we will absolutely consider further steps to make sure that the situation is resolved satisfactorily.
I've got a couple of observations, then I've got one more question, which is to one of the councillors on the benches. I think that this has been going on for such a long time, this issue, and I'm obviously aware that various committees have various responsibilities, and I do think that a judge in one particular court hearing was quite clear that the council can't have a split personality about how it makes these decisions, as we were trying to be both appellant and defendant, I seem to remember, which was madness, to be honest with you. So I think what I'm concerned about, from what I'm hearing, is that we've not still got a joined up one council approach in how we're dealing with this issue. I'm concerned that I'm not necessarily sold on Article 4 as approach, but what I am concerned about is process, and I'm a bit of a stickler for governance and process. And I think this has come too early, actually, before the committee, in light of other things that are going on, particularly the public rights of way issues. I also do think, and this won't make me popular with anyone in the room, but I do think that campaigners on both sides need to get back in the room together and have a conversation with each other to try and have a further attempt to mediate a more positive solution that's going to work both for the school and also local residents, if that is possible. And whilst I appreciate that may not be, I do think a further attempt should be made, because the amount of time, resource, impact this is having on everyone concerned is not a situation that I think any of us would want to find ourselves in and are probably happy about. So I think, the council, and I've said this, the council should play a role in perhaps appointing to whether it's mediators or some support to help facilitate those conversations. And I think that might be a better use of time than us trying to pursue one side or the other and probably incur further legal costs, whichever way people land today. And then the further point I also just wanted to make has been the nature and the tone of some of the debate that has been happening and the impact that's been having on individuals. When we were at the committee meeting last time, one of the councillors on this committee compared the school to a terrorist organisation, which was entirely unacceptable. And as my final question, I just thought I'd like to give the opportunity to Councillor Eddy to, now he's had a few weeks to reflect, whether he would like to withdraw his remarks or whether he stands by them.
Whilst Chairman, I don't actually have a role here to comment. Can I remind Councillor Reynard what I said last time? He can whistle in the wind.
Okay, right. I'm not sure that's the most constructive answer, Councillor Eddy. Sibs, I had you next, and then Susan.
Thanks. What a tough act to follow. I sit here as a fairly new councillor, 1 year and a half in, and the public gallery, the level of participation and engagement and civic will to want to represent their voice is absolutely amazing. However, one thing that is at the center of all three organizations and groups that are here today is about the level of trust in public consultation. And, I think there's something there. I think there's something in where society is in terms of trust, because even when consultation is not necessarily done by officers, it is a tender process that some company applies and does. We're told it's not the right data, it's not this, don't trust that. One party doesn't trust the other one doesn't trust the other one doesn't trust the other. And you know what? What is in this room is actually around the world. But I'm also looking at it from a ward perspective. Central Ward has got one of the highest crime rates. It's got some of the highest level of deprivation. And I'm fortunate enough, I don't have these topics in the ward. And I'm looking at this and thinking, where would a mediation or a truth and reconciliation go? Because as John mentioned, the costs that have been spent on this, the St. Marcus Group is saying that could potentially be a useful option for them. But there's something here about how we choose to engage with one another in an amicable and meaningful way. And I'm not taking anything away from you about the pains and the seriousness of the thing that you are advocating for. Nor am I from the school. But something about our participation and equal level of trust towards each other is diminishing. I'm happy for the participation, but I'm sad about the context of things that we are dealing with. I think we can deal with a lot more. And it could be more amicable to really, mediate, facilitate, truth and reconciliation, whatever. But I don't think the council has got the money to deal with this process. at this point in time, regardless of who may feel what. And you know, I'll finish off by saying, and I'm not going to repeat myself on this topic, is that there's a school at the center of this. That is a diverse school in an affluent ward, you know, and where other people in other wards are dealing with other issues. I'm not even undermining this topic to those in that ward, but like, 10 years.
Thank you. I've got Susan, and then I've got Jenny, and then I've got Toby. Are any of these, and then Cam, are any of these comments or questions? Sorry, are any of these questions, or have we moved on firmly into the realm of comment and debate? Right, so Jenny's got a question. Jenny, and then I'll come back to everyone else in order. I saw them indicate.
I just thought it would be worth kind of clarifying. So one of the main arguments you've made against using the Article 4 is that should the public rights of way be affirmed, then that would mean that we would have a different power, the Section 130 of the Highways Act. I guess I wanted to know what's the kind of relative timescales of when the Secretary of State might be making that decision, and maybe to help the public understand the council a little bit as well. How long do you think it would take? When would you be able to bring back an Article 4 to us if we approve one? Approve the investigation of one, sorry.
So with regards to how long might the planning inspector take to decide the public rights of way case, I don't know. They've got a large backlog in that particular type of casework as well, so it may well be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, we don't know, but it's likely to take quite some time. However, the power exists nevertheless, you know, and that is something we can use, and so in that respect, it kind of how long it takes doesn't really affect that argument of the necessity of an Article 4. Your other question was, remind me again, sorry. In terms of if you wanted us to produce the evidence, how long might it take? Like I said, would be quite an uphill struggle. We would have to get additional external advice as well. And with, you know, putting papers together, the decision pathway being what it is, I would think December at the very earliest, probably more likely early next year.
Thank you for that, Simone. Richard, I have seen your hand, so you can. But you're not next, but I have seen your hand. I had Susan, and then I had Toby, Cam, and Richard.
Just so people know that this is literally my second meeting in terms of this particular committee. It's really difficult because obviously this has been going on since 2011. It's a long time. So when people say, oh, it will take more time if we did an Article 4 and it will take more time if we do this, it's already been going on since the 2011. And any kids that were at school back in 2011, they're already in jobs. As a parent, I'd like to know that my children, they're all older now, so they're not at school, but all children should have a safe place to play in school as a parent. As a member of a community, I feel that all members of a community should be able to access green spaces in their community. So which way do we go? And for me, the only way to go is to make sure that everything is considered, everything is looked at, all options are looked into, For myself, I don't believe anybody should be whistling in the wind. We should be listening. We should be taking on board what everybody is saying in this room. And I think that we should be making sure that anything that is going forward includes everything that has possibly been done to make sure that the decision is the right one for the whole community, which does involve the school.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Toby?
Thank you, Chair. I must admit to being on the fence on this one, if you'll pardon the pun, coming into genuinely not knowing which way I would vote coming into this meeting. The crux of the argument given in the report is about whether the Article 4 would meet the test as defined in the legislation, and the introduction to the report reminds us that this committee only has a remit around the sort of planning policy aspects. However, not much space in the report is actually given to describing why those Article 4 tests are unlikely to be met, and then there's a lot of argumentation about other factors which are outside of this committee's remit, and so in a way I kind of wish that the time had been focused on just explaining to us the details of the Article 4 rather than all the rest of the items in the report. So that's why I was on the fence. But ultimately, I feel that given there is another process already in train through the public right-of-way, I don't think it's right to waste money and capacity on another option to essentially achieve the same goal when the determination on the public right-of-way will give us a definitive answer on the matter and would give the authority the definitive power to enforce the right-of-the-way of the public. So I'm likely to vote with the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Cam?
So, I mean, when it comes to the issue of it being, the school's playing fields, when I went to school, my playing fields were public land, and we never had any safety issues personally, and it was publicly accessible. So I do struggle to see the school side on that argument. I know that's a separate issue to the public rights of way and the Article 4 decision. But I just want to say, I do feel like the statement about, I was disappointed to hear the statement from the school's representatives that they are putting up do they want to put the fence back up? I feel that's an unnecessary escalation, and I'd ask them to think again about that. In terms of the report, can you come back to me? I've got other thoughts, but I need to think about them a bit more.
Okay. Okay, Cam. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. I commented to an officer beforehand. Many of my views about government in Bristol, including local government, were shaped by watching Yes, Prime Minister, the BBC sitcom in the early 80s. And for those of you who may not have seen it, primarily it's the minister, Jim Hacker, constantly, perpetually being outfoxed by his permanent secretary, Sir Humphrey Appleby, and told that he can't do what he'd like to do. I'm afraid there was an element I did feel I heard that in the report we had today. Now, I believe the Chief Planner rightly and appropriately put the necessary professional caveats and warnings, as she should. But I do think it's worth pursuing the option, clearly, of commissioning the officers to look in more detail at this. I firmly believe that, and partly that's affected by the fact we're not talking of some developer or some separate landowner. We're talking of a state school in this city, admittedly an academy now, and we are the landholder. And yet it seems to me the lease has been utterly flagrantly flouted for 14 years. Surely we could have done more. And there is a requirement on us to be more transparent. So I have no difficulty with that. We also heard from the chairman of governors, and I'm long enough in the tooth to go back to the noughties. I know she was a senior housing planning officer here, so she knows the system, of course. That, quote, Cotton would use more subtle ways in future. Well, frankly, in my view, that's not been the case to date. The school has driven coaching horses through its relationships with the community surrounding Stoke Lodge. And it has bullied. I've been in the meeting where they were filming members of the public who had the effrontery to speak to councillors. So I'm all in favour of going the extra mile. This is a public asset, a public resource, which we should actually fight for.
Okay, I'm going to start bringing things towards a close, but I'm conscious that I've got Jenny, I've got Tom, I've got my tuppence worth here as well, and Cam has indicated again. So I will take Jenny, Tom, and Cam in that order. Then I'll stick at my tuppence worth, and then we'll move to a vote.
Yeah. So my reasoning here is that this Article 4, were there no notion that there might be public rights of way across this green, I don't think we would be hearing from the public asking for an Article 4. I think that specifically the reason that they are asking for the Article 4 is actually because they believe that there are public rights of way and they want to use any means necessary to achieve that. And I don't think that's an unworthy aim. I really hope that the public rights of way are granted. I believe that you have public rights of way, and I believe that the proper way to enforce those is through that Highways Act power. I just can't justify how this Article 4 would have come about had we not already been having a completely different argument, and it sort of feels like it's been tacked on as a last, as like the next thing that could work. Now, I'm a bit like, if the committee votes for the Article 4, I would also not be that upset, because I think that there are potentially planning grounds. I think that this paper is quite biased in one direction. So I think it's like reasonable if people do want to vote for it and support the public in that way. But I think my opinion is that the hope for the public rights of way being granted is where I would put my money. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Tom, I had you next.
Just before I say so, I've got a question. And this is more for the public's understanding, right? The decision we're being asked to make today is whether or not to proceed with doing the work, to then decide whether to proceed with an Article 4 direction. We're not actually making a decision today on whether to proceed with an Article 4 direction, are we? Just to be really clear.
That's correct.
Great, thank you. I think it is a tricky one, and there's clearly a lot of history on this issue. I really don't think inflammatory language at this meeting or the one before has been helpful to the debate and the discussion. And we're in a time in the UK at the moment where it is not nice, and we've had more inflammatory comments from Nigel Farage today about stripping everyone of settled status and scrapping indefinite leave to reign, which would affect my partner among many others in the city. And we do need to be coming together. And Councillor Eddy, you really do no one any favours with some of your behaviour and your remarks. And I really would ask you go and give that some very careful thought for future, rather than doing things that are likely to be further divisionary and just make things worse in what is already really sensitive matters that need to be considered by this committee and also others. I think my other question and slash reflection is really whether we're in a position to make a decision on this today, given the other live lines of inquiry, and whether we're better off deferring this item until the decision has been made about the public rights of way. I think it's just a question that I throw out there. I mean, some might consider that kicking the can down the road, but I think I'm just fed up with so many sort of almost concurrent processes around this happening. This needs to be gripped as a whole council, taking one council view, whatever its various responsibilities and identities are across various regulatory and policy committees. And I think a further attempt needs to be made to bring the parties into the room. The council should support that. Now, I hear what you're saying, Sibs, around resources, but you know, this is about alternative dispute resolution at this point, and often that can yield an outcome that ends up being cheaper as well as better for everyone that's concerned. And therefore, you know, I think where my preference would probably be that we actually defer this item in lieu of just getting this sorted, because I think this has been rushed here today off the back of what was raised at the last meeting, rather than taking a much more thought out approach. So that's where I'm at, having listened to a lot of this debate, and just I'm happy to.
Thank
but
you,
maybe
Councillor Renner. Just for clarity, the reason this is here today, of course, is as a direct request of the Public Rights of Way and Greens Committee, who, of course, so it's interesting that, you know, part of the reason potentially to defer is because there is these other processes underway. But it was the request specifically of Public Rights of Way and Greens Committee that we do at least look at this option. So. Sure,
but this is my point about different committees doing different things, not just kind of getting one council approach sorted out, and it's just causing more time and angst for everyone involved, is my view. Council needs to sort itself out and speak with one voice on this issue, whatever that voice is.
Thank you. Cam, I was going to come back to you, wasn't I?
So yeah, I share what Jenny and Toby have said about the report itself, that it's not necessarily giving the answers that I think we were hoping for. In particular, about what we're actually required to consider for an Article 4, in the report it correctly states that it needs to be shown that it's necessary and proportionate to protect local amenity or the well-being of the area. And I don't think the report then even really talks about local amenity. And for me, it's quite obvious that there is local amenity for the site. And then I guess the response to that is then whether you know, the Article 4 direction is necessary to protect that local amenity. And I'm not to use the pun that Toby used, but I'm undecided on that at the moment. I think the officers have said that it's, and Thomas sort of referred to it being a case of seeing what happens with the public right of way. But that's if it gets granted public right of way status. And then if it doesn't, then we have this issue where they could just put the fence up, and we haven't got an Article 4 direction, so there's nothing for us to do to stop that. So yeah, that's my concern, I think.
Thank you, Cam. Sibs, me, and then I might come back to Councillor Renard and see if he wants to make a formal amendment on the basis of what he's just proposed a minute ago. Sorry? Yeah.
You know, I think there's different committees because they deal with the different decisions that need to be made at those committees. And at this committee, we're making the decision about this, what the paper in itself is represented, and then the public one, they'll make that decision. So, you know, I think looking at this, then you might as well say education also needs to make a decision about this because it's on educational land. Yeah. Yeah. I think based on what is in front of us, as mentioned already, that there are micro policies that we can act on that give us as much validity to act on without having something that's superseding on top of that. And those micro policies sit within the different departments that have got the capacity to deal with that as it is, such as the environmental team, the highways team, education team. They would deal with that. But to actually enact, to move forward with the recommendation, I think, yeah, that's more than what's required. And we don't have necessarily that budget to move on to this when there's other pressing needs.
Okay, right. So my thoughts on this, a bit like Cam actually, initially, and as far as I find it slightly baffling, because when I was at school, the playing fields were open to the public, and people would wander across. They would wander past you when you were out playing shot put or rugby or all the other stuff we did. I don't think there was any public rights of way, because to get to where you were going, you had to jump across a burn at the end of the playing fields. But people did that nonetheless. You could also access the railway track from the school playing fields as well, which, probably wasn't the wisest thing I've ever done in my life. So that's sort of my background on this. However, I've seen that school since be knocked down, those playing fields redeveloped as a new school, and there is very much a fence around all the playing field facilities that are there now. So I appreciate that life has, to some extent, moved on with regards to safeguarding considerations and the way we handle those spaces where school sports takes place. In this example, my sympathies are very much with the residents. I can see that the space is well used. I've visited it myself and had a cycle around. I saw the extent of the fence line, the remaining gates to nowhere that are there, and I can understand where people are coming from, and I can understand why this has become such a heightened issue in that part of the city. But I don't believe that Article 4 is a magic bullet. I don't believe that an Article 4 is going to fix the issues. I don't believe that it's going to lead to a long-standing resolution of the situation there. And I fear that it will lead this council into further litigation, further cost, whether that be directly, but also, the schools budget is also public funds, and any litigation that affects either us or the schools does affect what else can be achieved with that money. But bringing it back down from the broader context to the issue at hand, the test we are asked to apply is whether it's necessary and proportionate to the aims. And if the ultimate aim is to preserve that space as open space for access to everyone, whether this is the best mechanism for achieving that. And that I don't feel was met, that threshold I don't feel was met either, quite aside from any of the resource or other implications that this may have. So I've wrestled with this quite a lot, because as I say, my sympathy is very much on one side in terms of doing what we can to maintain public access as much as possible. And a bit like Tom earlier, I really do wish there was, that we could have some sort of concerted attempt to find resolution between the school and the local residents to come to an accommodation whereby both sets of needs could be met, if not fully, at least in part. Something we've not mentioned, I don't know how practical it is, but the idea of potentially dividing the space in some way so that public access could be retained potentially on one side of the I think it might be an oak tree, but don't shoot me if it's something else. But you know, potentially on one side of that space, and then maybe a more contained solution for the school adjacent to the pavilion. I don't know if that's practical or not, but I feel that there should be attempts at mediation that avoid the courts and the expense of the courts and making lawyers very wealthy, because it seems to me that this has cost both the council and the school a great deal of money, and the only people benefiting are lawyers at the moment. So that's a long way short that's a long way round of saying that on this occasion I am against proceeding with looking at an Article 4, certainly pending the review of the rights of way application that has been made. So that's where I am. So I feel like it's time to move to a vote. Sorry, we can't engage in a conversation with the public gallery that we have. So, Tom, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so just to come back to what I was suggesting before, on the basis of the many questions, loose ends, other threads that there are, I wish to propose that we defer this item until such time as the matter regarding the public's rights of way has reached a conclusion through the Secretary of State.
I'm going to ask my Democratic Services colleagues for how we frame that and how we, from a process point of view, how we proceed with that.
I think Councillor Renhard's made a motion, which, as I understand it, is that the decision be deferred until the outcome of the decision on the public rights of way from the Secretary of State is known. So that then needs to be seconded, and then I think we can vote on that as a motion.
Okay. So, just for clarity, we take that as almost like a separate motion rather than an amendation of the report options? Or
I don't think it's an amendment to the options.
It's a separate motion. Okay. Okay. Fine. In that case, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Breckles, thank you. Okay. So, can I ask then who would be in favour of such an approach, i.e. deferring a further consideration or any further consideration of whether to proceed with an Article 4 direction until and unless the matter over the rights of way has been settled. Yeah, that capture it? Thank you. Okay, in favour? Against? That's very clearly a fallen. For the record, Chair, because I didn't know how I was going to read that, I was against that as well. Okay. So that leads us on to consider the recommendations in the paper, and this is where my computer has locked me out and I can't see explicitly the recommendations, but I think I've got them here. The recommendation in the report is that the Economy and Skills Policy Committee concludes that it would not be expedient for the Council further to explore the making of an Article 4 direction for Stoke Lodge Playing Fields, permitted development rights for the erection, construction, maintenance, improvement or alteration of a gate, fence, wall or other means of enclosure. So that is the, well, I think that's not so much the recommendation as the initial. There was two options, wasn't there? But this is the. So if we vote on that first, and then anybody who any vote against that is a vote. How would that be?
If you move that as a motion, Chair.
If we move that as a motion,
and it's seconded and then voted on.
Seconded and then voted on. Depending on what happens. Okay, thanks. Okay, so so in that case, move that as a motion. I can have a seconder for that, which is to not proceed to explore on Article 4.
I will second.
Okay. All right. Members for that, i.e. against proceeding with an Article 4 examination at this point. That's 4. And members for that... sorry, yeah, I knew I was going to do that. Members against that, i.e. For proceeding with an Article 4 examination. That's 1. And abstentions on that. That's 3. Sorry, Cam. Sorry, didn't see your hand there. And that's why I have people around me to keep me right. So that's 4 for, 1 against, and 4 abstentions. So that is carried. Therefore, we have concluded that it would not be expedient for the Council further to explore the making of an Article 4 direction for Stoke Lodge, etc.
Chair, can I just ask? Sorry, if I may.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we've been mentioning about the potential of facilitating discussions. Obviously, as we voted not to move forward with Article 4, how do we put that across so that both parties and any third party in terms of community, if they'd like that option, how do we move forward from their perspective from this decision?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sibs. Obviously, both parties, or representatives from both parties, are in the public forum, so they will have heard those, but also senior officers across the council are here and aware of those calls from committee, which I would echo. I know that other senior officers in other departments that might have an interest in this as well are also aware of that desire. As to how we take it forward, that's a good question. John, do you want to come in on that?
Chair, very happy for myself and other senior officers to have discussions with the school and with representatives of the residents and see if we can make any progress.
Okay, thank you. I will leave that with you and others to take forward then. All right, so that... Councillor Renard.
Can we make sure an update comes to this committee, though, about progress and the outcome of that?
Yes, thank you. We can do that. Okay, so I said we would get to this point and have a break. It's obviously been a not insubstantial item, so thank you everyone for bearing with us, particularly the public gallery. I appreciate that it's not gone the way everybody would have liked, but unfortunately, that was always going to happen to someone, I think, ultimately. We're going to move to a break, 10 minutes. So 10 minutes suffice, members? Okay, we'll have a break for 10 minutes and then we'll return. The people who are here with regards to St Nick's markets, fees and petitions, I'm sure Democratic Services will be in touch with you to make sure you're set up appropriately for the petition debate. Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. So we'll reconvene from the adjournment. So we have an urgent item that, as I said at the start, that's been added to the agenda specifically because it relates to this committee's, to an item on this particular committee's agenda. So it wouldn't have made sense to have held it over till next time. So we have the petition debate. So I'm going to ask the lead petitioner, is that Lynn? So Lynn Hanby, you have up to 5 minutes to speak to your petition and present that to us. Then what will happen is each of the groups can have up to 3 minutes to reply should they wish. At this stage, some people may decide to defer their remarks until we go into the full debate. And then the subsequent to the petition debate and, in this case, the main agenda item, there'll be a formal response from myself as chair in writing. So that's the process. Deep breath and 5 minutes. Go.
Chair, councillors, today we present this petition with 3,435 signatures from the people of Bristol and the support of thousands of visitors who come to St Nicholas Market because they value it exactly as it is. The council say they have consulted with us. Yes, we have filled in questionnaires, submitted statements and analysis. We've attended meetings, but we were not heard. We've told them there was no need for these increases. Our fees have gone up with inflation year after year and higher than that in the last two. That the cafes in the exchange and covered market need larger areas to trade successfully and therefore would be unfairly targeted by this square footage model. Yet according to the council's own report, we're already paying above the national average, but we were not heard. We explained that these rises were unaffordable. Phased or not, an average increase of 40% is still the same thing. In this economic climate, there is no adjusting to this. Whether it comes quickly or slow, the end result is the same. Jobs will be lost. Businesses will be lost. And the essential atmosphere and character of the market will be lost. Please, can I get a drink? But we were not heard. We reminded them that the market was already making £55,000 a year over costs, and this, in truth, is a fiscal exercise with this extra income target going up from 115,000 to 265,000 halfway through the process. St Nick's Market is a real economic and social asset to Bristol. Does everything always have to be about increasing profits all of the time? Is it not also socially valuable to be of service and earn a modest living? We asked for them to look at other ways to raise the money. We tabled ideas of our own and offered to collaborate with them, work with them on solutions such as 7-day opening, new uses for the building, advertising, promotion. But the consultation focused only on statistics that could be selectively reported to support preconceived plans. Our painstaking, time-consuming responses were barely referenced, hidden in plain sight, within an extra large set of appendices, and again, we were not heard. Yet, councillors, there are people who did hear us. The people of Bristol heard us, the customers of St Nick's heard us, the visitors to St Nick's heard us, and in their thousands, they signed this petition. And while they signed, the people said these rises were extreme and would fundamentally change St Nick's, the heart of Bristol. Visitors celebrated its vibrancy and individuality, so different from the mundane chain stores everywhere. They signed, not for the historic exchange hall, beautiful as it is, or the wooden units that give our covered market its charm, or the lockups that open to fill the glass arcade with the sights and smells of food each day. They signed for us, for the people, for the traders and employees of St Nick's Market. They signed to save our businesses and people's jobs. They don't want a new shiny market filled with chain stores or the right calibre of trader. They want this market with the people who built it, who kept it alive, and who give it its character. They did not sign to have these rises imposed now and consulted on afterwards. Jobs and businesses will be lost in the first year. These are people's livelihoods, not collateral damage. They don't want you to use valuable taxpayers' money on yet another pointless consultation process, which is likely to be just as one-sided as the last and make no difference. Councillors, today we present this petition and ask you to hear the voices of Bristol, our visitors, and the traders who have dedicated their lives to this market, and their employees whose livelihoods are also at stake. We ask this committee not to approve the licence fee increases for St Nicholas Market traders. Protect the small, independent businesses and the heart of Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. So we now can have a round of speakers. So with a member of the Jenny, are you going to speak on behalf of your group? You have 3 minutes. It's a bit like full council.
Yeah, I haven't timed this. I'm just going to improv. Yeah, no, thanks for coming in. Well done getting that petition cracked out so fast. I think, you know, when I was looking at this months ago, I was thinking you know, if one business fails, maybe that's fine, but this is not just one business. I can see that it's not just one business. I can tell that you're saying this is going to make a huge change, and change can be a good thing, but this seems like it's an uncontrolled change that might be more like an avalanche. I absolutely have not been convinced by officers that all 5 years of these increases are going to be sustainable. I've said that to them, and I don't think they're entirely convinced about committing to that either, and that's why this is proposed to be staggered over 5 years. And I think what I'm trying to decide today, and what we Greens got kind of a position, but it's hard to know whether that first year and this principle of fairness, the idea of charging per square foot per zone, rather than maybe what the traders are asking for, which is based on per industry, whether that might have been fairer. It's hard to know what the fairest thing to do is. So that's what we really want to interrogate when we're debating this paper fully. I think the main thing that I want to do in, as we propose our amendment, which I do think strengthens it, and we'll talk about them all later, but I think me and Andrew will want to set up regular meetings with you, because the consultation so far has been like an administrative process that you get nothing out of. All you get is higher fees, and the council gets something, but what is that inward investment that they're talking about? It's really hard for you to know that that's going to you. And frankly, as councillors, I think we need to ask for that, that specificity. And we need to give traders much more in terms of long-term stability and letting you grow your businesses. If we're going to be increasing your fees, then I'm absolutely committed to making sure that that's not just like, yeah, your fees go up and that's the end, that's the last you hear of us. You absolutely should be banging on our doors if this goes through. We will absolutely be committing to making sure that trade goes up. And if we don't do that, then we have made a mistake and we'll have to abort immediately. So, yeah, I guess that's the position that we've got as the Greens coming into this debate, but further thoughts to be had. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was pretty much bang on 3 minutes. So, Tom, is you one of your group responding?
Lynn and colleagues in the audience, thank you so much for taking the time to come along today and to voice the concerns of traders and residents from across the city alike. The speed at which you've amassed almost 3,500 Bristol signatures, never mind the rest that had also signed, taking you over 5,800, I think less than a month, tells you the strength of feeling that there is on this issue from across the city. And you know, I think one of the things I was reflecting on is, you know, what makes Bristol Bristol? And one of the things that makes Bristol Bristol is its vibrancy, its networks of independent traders throughout the city. Same with Gloucester Road, you know, as much. And you know, the St Nick's Market's been around since 1743 in various guises. It's as much a tourism destination as it is a place where people will go looking for various wares, for some very hot sauces, from what I was looking at on Friday. And also, having been there myself frequently for my lunch as well, you know, we've got a really nice mix of independent businesses that are there. And therefore, we need to make sure that the way we proceed is with a great deal of care and making sure that we're doing things in partnership. My background prior to being a councillor is working in mental health and largely in consultation and engagement and co-production, and really trying to make sure the NHS was working with people with lived experience of mental health problems, not doing to them. And you know, you'll often hear claims of, well, we're working with them, and you're like, no, you've barely consulted, because actually what you've had is a preconceived idea of what you want to do. You've had the illusion of consultation, and then you've just gone ahead and done what you like anyway. And it's why the trust in institutions is at an all-time low and continues to reduce, because people don't feel heard. They don't see changes being made to the extent necessary in response to their feedback either. And I'm actually quite disappointed that we seem to reach the point that we have. And really, I was going back through the December paper where we saw the 5% increase, but agreed to go and look at the turnover model. Now that's been listened to. The turnover model is not now proceeding, but we've still got a proposal that's going to put many traders out of business. And you know, that cannot be how this council approaches its policy objectives, whether it is the East Bristol livable neighbourhood that's currently putting traders out of business, including the chippy, or it is for St Nick's Market traders. We've really got to make sure we're thinking about an approach that's going to have that's going to support economic development and make sure that we don't lose all our small independent traders and end up with just a bunch of big corporates. That then means we're devoid of personality within these spaces, because then Bristol loses what makes Bristol Bristol. Now, I welcome some of the remarks from Councillor Barton. I mean, we'll get into the debate on the amendment as well, which I'm a bit confused about, because obviously it talks about working with the traders, which is great, but what's the Green Left administration been doing for the last 12 months would be my question, because is that not what's meant to have been happening up until now? We won't be voting for the proposals as they are today. They're ill thought through. They're going to put traders out of business. They're going to impact on the character and very fabric of Bristol. This needs to be taken away, worked through in more detail, and then brought back at a future meeting for something that's a lot more reasonable. It's going to work for both market traders and the council as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Renard. I'm going to defer comment till the end and use chairs. So, Councillor Reddy, you have up to 3 minutes if you wish to respond to the petitioners.
Can I thank very much the St Nick's traders for bringing this petition here today. Running a business in this country is difficult enough, particularly at the present time. To devote time, effort and energy to actually this consultation and your campaign is nothing short of miraculous, so well done. I fully understand officers are in a cleft-stick situation. The council is under financial challenge, of course. Many service areas have been seeking to consume their own the smoke. That's right. And produce savings or increased incomes to meet current service levels. But I do think we're in danger of knowing the price of everything but the value of nothing. There are certain things, and I believe St Nick's are actually part of this. It's a unique part of Bristol. It's not just a business centre for independent traders, important as that is, but it's also a key cultural, it's a tourism, it's very much a cultural destination, of course. I read in the report, over 3.3 million people visit St Nick's markets, and that's pretty impressive, particularly bearing in mind the car isn't exactly encouraged to go into central Bristol, of course. I have in the past, as an opposition politician, talked about the council consults but then ignores. Now, to be fair, that's not all how it should be. It's not how it always is, but it has been sometimes. And clearly, we weren't listening to you, I think, by the findings of this report and what you're telling us. 40% rise is unacceptable, of course, bearing in mind the huge costs put on you, of course, in recent times. So again, like Tom, I will be voting against the fee increase. I appreciate we need to set realistic fees and we have to have realistic business plans, but we need to work in company with you, not against you.
Thank you. I would like to also thank the petitioners for their petition and for bringing this to us. I would like to share the sentiment of Councillor Bartle in as far as I, not explicitly reached out to you, Lynn, or your federation. Federation, is that? It's a federation of small market traders. Anyway, I hadn't explicitly reached out to you, and I regret that actually. And I would be willing to meet with you on, going forward to discuss these sorts of issues. I think the challenge that we have is the balancing the responsibilities that we have as a landlord, as a to yourselves as tenants, or within businesses within St Nick's, and our broader responsibility to the wider city to ensure that all the council's assets benefit the city as a whole, and that includes the cultural aspect of attracting people to St Nick's and what it provides as a as a community, as part of the city, but it also includes ensuring that the council taxpayers of Bristol get a fair rate of return for the investment within the market. And I think that's where the challenge, that's the crux of the challenge that we have. I know that officers take those responsibilities very seriously. I know from personal conversations that, when the phase 1 part of the consultation made it clear that the turnover model within the Glass Arcade was not a flyer, and the alternative zoning approach was looked at. They were absolutely adamant that they could not proceed with that zonal approach, an equalising and ironing out historic inequities within the market in one go, and hence why we are looking at a proposal to phase these increases in over an extended period of time to allow traders the opportunity and the chance to plan and make that adaptations to their business models, to their approach within the market, you know, in order to accommodate and absorb change. So I sort of run out of the train of my thought there, but you know, it is not the desire of this council, it's not the desire of me, or, well, I can only speak, you know, speaking for myself, to see St Nick's flounder, to see this adversely affect the market. We want to see the market thrive in the long term, but we need to see that in the context of the wider city and ensure that the wider city can benefit. And my challenge is to make sure that those increased fees and increased income within the council is reinvested to make the market better, to enable traders. We've heard about extended opening hours, for example, to facilitate that so that traders can maximise their incomes within the market and within that framework. So I'm going to move on to the presentation of the report and then the debate. The report seeks approval of the proposal and recommendations set out in the report, having considered the results of Phase 1 and Phase 2 licence fees consultation. And it's here before us because it's a key decision as its significant impacts on 2 or more wards on account of it being a citywide asset. There is an amendment that has been tabled to recommendation 3 that's been tabled by Councillor Bartle. So we'll deal with that procedurally when we come to it. But first of all, over to Anissa to present the report. And then I propose that we'll do as similar to what I did in the previous report. So questions, not comments, followed by the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so, and thank you, Lynn, for presenting. I'm also now taking a deep breath, so you have my sympathy as well for that. Okay, so just to pick out the key points of the report, Chair, I'll try not to take too long, but I think it's important that I do go through it properly, if that's okay. So just in terms of background, obviously we recognise St Nicholas Market as a historic asset. It provides unique and flexible workspace and home to 63 independent traders trading within the Exchange Hall, Glass Arcade and Covered Market. The indoor traders provide over 130 jobs directly and support others within the local supply chain. And we have up to a further 50 traders trading in, regularly in outdoor markets throughout the week as well. We recognise the market is a key business, tourism, cultural and heritage destination within the city centre for both residents, visitors and attracts 3.35 million visitors. And that was recorded in 2024 through our footfall counters. Within the indoor spaces at St Nicholas Market, there are 3 distinct areas with different offers. So the Exchange Hall, predominantly retail, the Glass Arcade is food and drink, and the Covered Market is predominantly services and retail. The indoor areas are generally very well occupied, and the current occupancy rate is 95%, which compares very favourably with the national occupancy rate, which is 78%. So just a bit of background and rationale to introducing a new fee structure. There hasn't been a fee and charges review of St Nicholas Market for over a decade. Prior to 25-26, fee increases have been inflationary only, and the fees being charged across the market are not consistent in each of the areas. The market team is not currently meeting its income target, and that impacts overall on the Economic Development Service, who are picking up that shortfall in the wider service budget. The new proposed fee model allows traders to be charged consistent rates, increasing fairness across the market. Fees are being, or the proposal is to increase fees to a more commercial rate in line with other similar markets, and to generate appropriate additional income from the market, helping the council's challenging financial position. From an economic development perspective, we aim to create an incubation environment that supports business growth, leading to the uptake of high street premises for some traders. So in terms of the development of the fees model, in mid-2024, market experts Marketplace were commissioned to develop options for generating 115k of additional income, which was our existing forecast shortfall, based on a review of our operation and best practice in other comparable cities. Marketplace compared St Nicholas Market licence fees with other local authority markets across the UK, and that showed that fees were generally low. Marketplace at that point recommended a 5% increase to non-food traders and a turnover model to food traders of 15%, estimating that a turnover model for food traders alone would yield a minimum of 150k per year. And that information was used to set a revised income target, which was published in the council's medium-term financial plan. Without a revised fee structure, the income gap will be 265k from 26-27, and in December 2024, the Economy and Skills Committee considered proposals to achieve financial sustainability for St Nicholas Market. A 5% increase to all fees was approved from Q1 of this financial year, and there was also approval to consult with traders on options to review the fee structures, including a turnover model. So the Economic Development Service commenced formal consultation with traders in March 2025, following the committee approval. The Phase 1 consultation sought trader views on a turnover model based on options of 10%, 15% and 17% across all traders. And this consultation also requested business information, which would have helped us ascertain the health of the market, but this information was not provided by most traders. Following that, the results of that consultation was that the turnover model received strong opposition from traders, 90%, and the turnover model was therefore not progressed. However, the service still needs to develop a new fee model which meets its income target, and therefore we went back out to consultation, a Phase 2 consultation in June 2025 of this year, and proposed a fee model based on unit floor space, equalising current rates in different parts of the market and zoning different areas of the market in line with footfall levels. We analysed the impact of introducing the model in 1 year on a trader-by-trader basis, and that concluded with us agreeing that we needed to phase the model over a 5-year period, allowing traders the opportunity to plan and adapt to a new fee structure. A phased model also allows officers to monitor the impact of the increase to ensure that we have a clear understanding of the health of the market following any change, and that we are able to implement measures to protect the market, particularly if the number of vacant units increases dramatically. The range of increases proposed are from 5% to 20% a year over a 5-year period for the different zones. And these increases allow officers to set out a model which achieves the income target in a phased way by year 5. The majority of respondents to the consultation agreed with each individual step of the proposed model. However, nearly 70% disagreed with the model overall because of the level of increases. And our feedback included responses to the phase 1 and 2 surveys, additional written responses, one-to-one meetings, informal meetings with trader representatives. So I would say that we did our due diligence around consultation, although I am receiving feedback that that's not the case. Some of the responses also suggested other income generating ideas, and some of those we are already exploring. For example, Sunday trading over the summer, linked to the grommet within the covered market, was an option that we were testing over the summer period, and we had additional funding to be able to do that. Some of the suggestions coming forward around income generation were not viable for a number of reasons. We have taken forward the viable options, and these are highlighted in the report, and have the potential to generate between 69 and 87k per year. And that figure has been included in the overall income forecast alongside the fees, and that is work that the Market Service and Economic Development Service will need to take forward if this is agreed, as well as identifying funding to be able to do that. One of the key ideas raised was to bring vacant space above the exchange hall back into use, and economic development would really welcome these spaces being brought back into use, particularly as they could provide incubation and small workspaces, and that's something that officers will explore with the corporate landlord model. At the moment, those space is not within the remit of the Market Service, it sits within another service in the council. So the report identifies key risks for the proposal, and those include not meeting the income target, vacancy levels increasing and the associated potential loss of revenue for the council, market businesses struggling financially leading to closures, and income generated being returned to the centre could result in no additional reinvestment in the market. Sorry, my phone's going off, my watch is buzzing, apologies. And as well as identifying key risks, we've also identified mitigations for those risks, and they're included in the paper. So the 5-year phasing allows for a more sustainable approach compared to a 1-year increase, which presents an unrealistic burden for traders and a greater risk for the market overall. Additional income initiatives that I've referred to earlier would total somewhere in the region of 69 to 87k per year, and that would be added to the income generated through the market. Allowing traders where possible to reduce their floor space or relocate to a different zone, and that would involve making sure that we improved our business support to specific traders. There's a business support ecosystem that exists across the city, and we would need to ensure that we extend the reach and enable specific support to traders impacted by this proposal. And also that we would undertake a full and internal review of the impact of the fee model at the end of year 1. We've already sourced external funding to support upgrades within St Nick's, and we would continue to do that as officers, because we understand the impact and the role that the St Nicholas market plays within the city centre economy. Would you like me to move on, Chair, to the amended recommendations, or pause?
I think we pause there, but I guess when it comes to the amendment being moved, if you've got any immediate comments, we could take those ahead of that debate. But for the time being, if we can take questions on the main paper, I'm seeing Councillor Reddy's hand first, as always. But yes, questions initially, and then we can move to more substantive debate.
One tries to be consistent, Chairman. The officers outlined the 2 rounds of consultation. We have the detailed findings in our packs, of course. Can you tell me, was there any dialogue with the Traders Federation to shape the options of the questions in the consultation?
So when we did the consultation, we did it in the form of surveys that were emailed out to traders. We did invite individual traders to come to us to have individual conversations or ask us any questions about the exercise. But also we had informal meetings 2 or 3 times with representatives of the National Market Traders Federation to hear their ideas, thoughts.
Is it? Sorry, we can't. I had to be strict earlier, so I'm going to maintain that, I'm afraid. Councillor Bartle.
As was pointed out in a speech earlier, the original consultation report said that many traders wouldn't be able to sustain a 21.5% increase, which is kind of at the time what we were looking at, like, oh, that would cover our budget. But now many of them are facing, or I think all of them are facing that or above on average. So I suppose, where does that point come from? How did we decide that this was fair when we'd got a reasonable amount of evidence that it wasn't financeable or fundable by the traders?
Thank you, Councillor Bartle. So the model is based on the different zones within St Nicholas Market, and the zones are kind of linked to the type of trading. So the zones are linked to the type of trading and the footfall. So for the Glass Arcade, where there's food traders and much more kind of profitable business model that receives the highest footfall in the market, the level of increase is far higher than in the Exchange Hall, where there's higher dwell time, a different level of footfall, so therefore the percentage increase is a lot lower. So that's kind of the rationale for the model. So it's footfall, and that's kind of linked to the type of trading in the different zones.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's what it says in the original report that we got from the consultants. I remember, and it is in here somewhere, there's a bit about, hang on, if I just search for it, 21.5. Yeah, the original report definitely stated that the 21.5% rent increase would be too much. And that is what is being proposed in the covered market. I don't understand that.
But I was talking about an increase all in 1 year, whereas obviously what we're doing is phasing it across 5.
Right. So the difference is that,
and obviously that
21.5 in 1 year is not affordable, but you're saying across the 5 years we can increase business, we can do all sorts of things, and it'll.
I think you have to remember that report was written in the context or recommending the turnover model happening at the same time. So it was making comments about what wouldn't be viable in other parts of the market.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bartle. Sibs.
Yeah, thanks. Wow. My first question is more about the finance part, and I think you've touched on this, what you call it, turnover model. Is that from the trader's perspective, the first target, the first consultation's focus was on 115,000, and then this fee seemed to have increased, or this target then increased to 265,000. So their justification is, if we were doing a consultation based on 115,000, now the figure changed, then that means consultation 1 is void from that perspective. Can you provide clarification as to the first figure and the second figure, and the comments by the traders as to that change.
Thank you. I understand that perspective. So the consultation, phase one of the consultation explicitly was looking at the turnover model and addressing the 115k deficit that the service had already. When we were in discussions around a potential turnover model, it was clear that it had the potential to generate significantly more income. So the baseline for that was from 150k, an additional 150k, but actually a turnover model would have driven far more than that. So that figure was taken and added to the existing income target, resulting in the 265k. So the turnover model, and as a result of the phase one of the consultation, I would say it wasn't void, because the result of that is that a turnover model was not taken forward because it was strongly opposed.
So should the figure then have changed if the turnover model, which was the assumption of the calculation, also, so you've got the overall expenses of the service, then you've got the potential of what the turnover model could generate, put those figures together, then you have the total figure that you're working on. So if phase one then cut out this turnover model, then shouldn't have that figure changed then?
Alec, I was going to respond, but I'll allow John.
Yes. Thank you. No, it's a good question, Councillor. Can I make just a couple more general points and then come to the question, if that's okay? So I don't think it's remiss of me to point out this approach has been brought in the wider context of the Council's financial position as a whole, that all councillors are very familiar with, but just for everyone's benefit, we've managed to set a budget for this current year. We are bringing forward proposals for savings through the normal process for future years. A level of savings was assumed around this programme. I think the overall approach was very much about trying to look for income which could be used for the council to meet its various statutory responsibilities in lots of areas where we've got a lot of pressures. And it's a general point, but you know them well, in terms of special educational needs, adult social care, temporary accommodation. So that's the context. The individual income targets for services, vary from time to time. There's an overall obligation on us as officers to bring forward proposals to try and bring additional income to meet those significant financial challenges, and obviously on councillors to look, and committees to look at proposals wherever we can. The Economy and Skills Committee has, to be fair, relatively limited opportunities for savings compared to some other areas, but this is obviously one of the key things that was built into the medium-term financial plan. The team have done a pretty extensive job of consulting, and there's been a lot of engagement, and that continues, which is a very positive thing. There were very strong views about the turnover model that was proposed, and obviously that's been withdrawn following the consultation, and a revised proposal has come forward. So I think that's the context for me. In terms of there was an original savings target for the service at one level. There were various proposals which would have achieved more significant savings than that. I don't think in and of itself that's a challenge at all. I mean, frankly, what is, I think, a fair test for officers to consider and to put forward to councillors is it reasonable, the level of charges that are being proposed, particularly in the context of benchmarking against other sorts of services, both within the city and in other cities. And I think that's the conclusion that we came to, that the proposals were reasonable in that context. So it's no surprise to me that obviously they're unpopular with traders, and obviously we've tried to respond by listening to that and made changes.
I completely, and from the beginning of the brief, Anusha mentioned that this hasn't happened effectively for over 10 years. So, that's quite understandable that this does need to be addressed, and I'm no way, in any shape or form, hiding away from the fact that we do need to address the undealt issues of the financial constraints of the market. You know, I've spent the last 4 years supporting minoritized businesses, and I've engaged with about 500 of them since COVID, and I've worked with the team from not as a councillor, but as someone supporting and doing business support, so the vacant property grant and all that stuff. So I'm speaking mainly from that element. But when the traders sent in their questions, one of the core concern was this. Thus, I'm asking to get that clarification. I've got other points that I'd like to mention, not these ones, but this is the feeling from the traders. My last point on this one is that when looking at the council's figures, the traders suggest that there's an operating surplus of 55,000, and the overall perceived financial part of the economy and skills part, but on St. Nicholas market is 761. Now, the traders are trying to understand, so how is that currently spent? You know, and looking at the report, I didn't get the nitty-gritty of how is that kind of financially spent, because guess what? Rents do go up, service charges go up, anywhere you go, right? But there has to be some sort of justification for that. And to put it on operation, I think maybe the traders wanted to see a bit more of this is where the gap really is in terms of gas, electric, and you know, when you talk about footfall, you know, compare the Manchester market to the Bristol market, but when you talk about footfall is the marketing that the team is doing to bring some of those traders and visitors, and the businesses are also doing it themselves with the newsletter. I get the newsletters from the South African shops. They're also doing that marketing. So you can see the impact of marketing coming together, but obviously costs have increased on your side. You got gas, you got electric, you got internet, all of those pop. But I think it's more about like really showing this is the cost that it takes to run this, and this is why we need this increase. I think that element of transparency would have built more trust, would have made the data a bit more robust, because there's a bit of uncertainty about the data element of this. And as the ward councillor, I must say, I'm very disappointed about the level of engagement that this process had with the ward councillor for the St. Nick's part. You know, it's a stretched ward, Central, and many of the time that we've spent has been in Redcliffe and Kingsdown and doing community forums there and so forth. And in the city centre, I must say, you know, you've got the bids, you've got Visit West, and they're working amicably on solutions to address this, because, you know, this has been a very focused approach, not really thinking about the whole. But I know Alex and his team at Regen are doing much more to look at this one budget, but from a holistic point. So, you know, admire the work. I just think that there were certain flaws that we could address. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I've got Tom. We seem to, again, have moved from questions seamlessly into debate and comment. So, I've got Tom. Did I just see you indicate as well when we get to the debate? So, question.
I want to come back to this, the finances. So obviously I'm aware of the income target that's been set, but what this policy committee approved in December last year was a 5% rise. It did not approve setting an income target that was based on a turnover model. It gave permission for it to be explored and consulted on. So how has it ended up in the budget? I'm obviously aware I've had the vote of full council, but I'm a bit confused from a due process perspective. That wasn't what we agreed at this policy committee last December.
It's the medium-term financial plan that Marvin last produced, I think.
No,
it's not.
No, it's
your
budget. We didn't vote for it.
It went through the consultation process that last year through this finance subcommittee and the public meetings of finance of that body in January this year. And then into the decision papers for SNR and full council.
So despite it not being agreed at this committee, it was looked at because of the savings challenges the council was facing. Would that be a fair assessment?
I guess it was a combination of the fact that the committee had agreed to proceed with at least looking at the turnover model, as well as you know, the broader financial situation, which we're all well aware of.
Yes, and I've got some savings ideas, including not appointing more exec directors that would save you probably about the gap. So I think, so this income gap is 265,000. Can we just confirm, just for everyone's benefit, income target aside, what is the current income of that the market makes, and what is its current costs?
I'm sure the team will be able to answer that very quickly. I mean, it does achieve a surplus, Councillor. That, we make no bones about that, and that has been part of the information that's been provided as we've gone about this.
So, what's going to happen? What would happen if this got approved today? What would happen with the additional money? Is it just going to savings, or is it going to be invested back in the market? Because if it's a general fund savings proposal, it's presumably going into the general black hole of the council's accounts rather than to be invested in the savings market, right?
It's not ring fence, Councillor, so it would go towards meeting the statutory responsibilities that we have.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be invested back in the market, would it? Mm-hmm. Okay. I just wanted to come back to occupancy rates, actually. There's a bit of a question, and I've got something else on income generation. So the report talks about occupancy rate of 95% versus elsewhere in the country where it's at about 78%. So, I mean, would we consider that a good level of occupancy rate? Do we think there's not enough turnover there? You know, what's kind of the officer view on that?
So, obviously we have a very high occupancy rate within the market at the moment. And that's in part driven by our very low fees structure. And we are aware of that. I think that there isn't a huge amount of turnover either. And I think that kind of stimulation of more of a mix of offer would be a positive outcome from this.
Okay. And then just on income generation, you said there were some ideas put forward that weren't viable for a variety of... so you said there were some proposals for income generation that weren't viable for a variety of reasons. Could you just unpack that a bit more for the committee, please?
So these were income generation options that were put forward as part of the consultation. And I think they're in the report.
Yep.
They're detailed in the report. So there would have been opportunities around spaces that were not directly in our control. And I think there was a lot of feedback on the upper floors of the Corn Exchange, and that's one of the kind of recommendations that we've put forward around working with our property colleagues to bring that space into use fully and drive income through managing that space and potentially creating an incubation space. Been talking to SIBS a lot about that. That's real economic development stuff that we want to do with the market, a real sort of vision for it. Unfortunately, it would require some capital investment, so none of these things are easy to do. So we would have to seek investment, create a plan, capital and infrastructure improvements, and then, but that is a kind of real ambition for us to do that. So there is that opportunity around those spaces that weren't originally viable because they're not within our control, but we have kind of discussed and considered that working with our property service colleagues would be a really good option that would drive income out of this particular option. The other areas that we've been looking at are opening on a Sunday, so 7-day-a-week opening, and we piloted that over the summer linked to Grommet Unleashed, but we did receive additional income to be able to do that because there are additional staff costs associated with it, so that would have increased our kind of sort of spending even more. So we looked at securing additional income for events and Sunday opening, which we've secured for this year through UK Shared Prosperity money. We've evaluated our Sunday opening actually, and only 50% of traders took advantage of that opportunity. To be fair, the majority were in the Exchange Hall. The food traders, there weren't many food traders open on a Sunday, so that was quite disappointing. So if we consider 7-day-a-week opening, we would need to make sure that that was kind of a viable option because it costs more money. And then obviously there are opportunities around kind of additional events and night markets, which are viable opportunities as long as we've got the money to be able to do it, but also we're able to remove St Nick's Market from our current food policy, where we're not allowed to promote serving alcohol, because there's a real opportunity there around sort of commissioning an events kind of company to use that space at night, but we are kind of locked in around our kind of food policy with the council. Advertising, sorry, being corrected by my team. The advertising policy. So there is work that we would need to do to make that opportunity viable as well. Was there anything else, Jason?
I was going to come back to the question about the budget. So the revenue budget for the team is 630,000, and at the moment I'm forecasting 672,000 of income.
So it makes money. One more question just about the grommet, because I thought that sounded really great. And obviously, you know, the market's obviously very visible and high profile in its own right, but it sounds like that helped to drive some further, what's the word I'm looking for? Visitors. There we go. It's getting late on a Monday. So where did the idea for that come about?
That came from the traders. So obviously we're really supportive of the traders coming forward with kind of ideas and supporting us to generate more interest. So yeah, that came directly from the traders. And also it's located in the covered market as opposed to the front of it was located in the covered market as opposed to the front of the exchange hall, because the covered market is an area that gets the least footfall. So it was driving people around the market to the covered market. So, and it was great. Yeah, absolutely. Something to be proud of over the summer.
Thank you. I'll probably hold the mic long enough for questions.
Thank you, Tom. Right, any other questions? Okay, shall we move? I'm really conscious of time now, folks. And we've still got 2 other items after this, but we need to do them all justice. This has always been my approach to chairing meetings, is that sometimes things take however long they take, and we need to do them justice in the public forum. That said, brevity is a virtue. Not always one I possess, but it is a virtue. Any moving to a debate or more comments? Fabian, you'd already indicated, so you're first, and then I think...
Could I suggest it might be helpful if we took Jenna's amendment?
You are right. I'm going to ask procedurally, do I have to... how do I do this?
First of all, you have to move and second the original recommendation.
Right. So, before we... I'm being told, from a procedural point of view, I need to move the original recommendations and seek a seconder.
Second.
Okay. And then you can move your amendment. So do you want to briefly propose what you have tabled? Anissa, if you want to respond, and then we'll move to sort of a wider debate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need a seconder as well, I think. I'm good. I would like to propose the amendment.
Yes, seconded, yeah.
Yeah. I was actually going to let Sibs explain our thinking around this, because he's very eloquent.
Well, this is 18 months of work with the Business Improvement District, Visit West residents, and many others about the future of Broadmead. So this amendment offers a critical opportunity to adjust the course. It asks us to pause and genuinely engage and co-create the future vision of the market. Not only of the market, but rather of the whole St. Nicholas Market building. This is not only about the market stalls, it is about the city at large too. This is not a request to hinder on the financial responsibilities that is required at all. It is a request to find a better way that does not threaten the market. St. Nicholas Market stands as a unique cultural asset within Broadmead and can then serve as an anchor and elevate the Broadmead vision and St. Nicholas Market too. The current consultation mainly focused on price. However, we need to think about what is the vision for Broadmead and what is the vision for St. Nick's as a whole, to have a stronger justification for the price increase, of which our traders, our city, and many others would welcome what that future vision may be, and is justifiable to understand the cost implications of that growth, whilst we keep the vibrancy and the independence of our small businesses there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, so moving on then. I had Fabian, and I've now seen Councillor Reddy, so, or Richard. I always switch between people's surnames and... and I had said I would go to officers in response to the amendment, but Tom, I suspect I know what your question is going to be.
I'll save my comments for the debate, but the question is, this amendment would still leave recommendations 1 and 2 intact, wouldn't it? So it's not going to pause anything. It's going to let the fee rises go through, right? No, it's a question. It's a follow-up question. It's a follow-up question. So it's going to let the fee rises go through, and then look at it all in a year's time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll answer it. Yes, we're sort of sneakily on the benches thinking we may propose a second amendment, which would pertain... Sorry, I know. We've listened to the public. We're persuaded by what the public are saying, and we're considering that in the new proposed fee model, we would only perform step 1 and step 2, and step 3, which is the percentage increases over 5 years, would not be brought in at this stage, and then we would come back with our report in next year. That's what we would look to do. That's what the Greens would like to support, because we think we support the new fee structure, but we're hearing what the public are saying. However, that is a second amendment on a different point, which, if the committee doesn't want to vote on that, then that's fine. We'll propose it, and someone will second it. So we can have a pause now if you want to figure out what we need to do procedurally.
I mean, right. I think people know I'm generally quite mild-mannered, but this is just, there is procedure for introducing amendments, and you've tabled an amendment. There is a procedure for introducing amendments on the day, and now we've got to the stage where an amendment has been moved, and then when asked a clarification question on that amendment, we're told that another amendment to the amendment or a second amendment may be moved, and it's not particularly easy for myself as chair to follow, other members of the committee, or indeed the public, to understand exactly what you're proposing. So, like I say, I'm mild-mannered, and I don't get het up particularly easily, but you've managed to push that button today, Jenny. So I'd like clarity as to what exactly the Green Group's position is in terms of moving an amendment before the rest of us can get on with the debate.
Sure, I'll clarify for you. So we'd like to move with the recommendation that's in front, that amendment. And I guess the suggestion was that we'd go with the square.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's do that.
Apologies to everyone. We're going to take a few minutes adjournment whilst we seek clarity on what's been proposed. where we've got to. So I understand that a procedural motion may be indicated. So, Councillor Renard.
In keeping with the first item on the agenda, I'm going to propose that we defer this item. There's clearly a lot of unhappiness with the proposals as written. There's been a lot of information that's come to light that's made me and I think others uncomfortable and even unhappier.
And do we have a seconder?
I second.
We've got lots of seconders. Okay, fine. Can we have all those in favour then of deferring? So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against and abstaining. So that was what did it say? 7 for, 1 against, 1 abstaining. Okay. Well, we will revisit this again in due course. So thank you to those who did come and attended. I guess I don't think anybody anticipated that this would be the outcome today, but we'll take it away, we'll reflect, and we'll come back in due course. So, that having been said, moving on then to agenda item 9, Bristol Music Fund. The full title of this is Bristol Music Fund Roadmap to the Future. So Carly Heath is our nighttime economy advisor and is going to introduce this report. Can you just leave quietly whilst we proceed? But I am keen to push on at this juncture.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. So we are looking to, with the proposals for the Bristol Music Fund Roadmap to the Future, we are asking the committee to seek approval for the preparatory work. Sorry, shall I just wait until they roll out?
Sorry, if people are leaving, can they leave quickly and quietly, please? Because we do need to press on.
Okay, so our proposals are for committee to approve the preparatory work that we need to do to establish a community benefit society that would manage a future Bristol Music Fund. We are looking to create a community benefit society would create a self-sustaining funding model that would support Bristol's music sector as outlined in A Ticket to the Future, which is a feasibility we published in November last year. The reason why we're doing this is music is clearly very central to Bristol's musical identity, Bristol's cultural identity, and grassroots venues nurture music talent. They bring communities together. They provide the gathering spaces where people can come and celebrate and bathe in joy. There is chronic underinvestment in the music sector, particularly at that grassroots level, not just in Bristol but nationally. In Bristol, 78% of our events happen in venues that are under 1,000 capacities, so the majority of our venue estate is technically grassroots, but these generate only 32% of the annual ticketing revenue that the city receives. So the annual revenue is between 42 million and 70 million pounds a year, and that is just on music tickets alone. That's not the wider economic benefit of music events that happen in the city. So with 78% of these events happening in a venue that is small, but only generating 32% of the entire revenue, it's easy to see where the disparity is on who's doing the lion's share of the work in creating an incredible music scene and underpinning Bristol's reputation, but they're receiving a really small portion of the revenue that the city generates. And this really is the crux of the sector fragility amongst the music industry
in the country. In the last year, 16% of UK grassroots music venues closed, and local venues are facing rising costs and limited access to public funding. The majority of the venues we spoke to as part of the feasibility process had never received any sort of public funding. So this self-sustaining model really is to make sure that we can look after the music sector in the city for the future. There is lots of data in the paper that tells you about the size of the economy. I won't labour on about that too much, but our proposals for a Bristol Music Fund is that we put 1% on every single music ticket in the city, not paid for by the promoter, the performer, or the venue itself, who are at the most at the raw end of that economic fragility, but paid for by the customer, like a booking fee. So a £5 ticket, 5p, £50 ticket, 50p. That collected into a central pot, which would be this Community Benefit Society, could generate between £400,000 a year and £1 million every single year if implemented on scale, if implemented citywide, and that would be reinvested back into the music industry to support those, to support the wider music economy. A Community Benefit Society is a really lovely type of organisation. It is a cooperative. It's got it's a type of cooperative business that has got democratic governance really hard baked in. It means that it would be democratically owned and governed by the community, the music community and beyond, who would get a say in how that fund develops over time. We are proposing 4 pillars where the funding could support. So that would be venues, safeguarding the actual buildings, the spaces that they're in, events, supporting the gatherings, the happenings, if you like, where like how those music events happen, and enabling creative risk. Support music making, so supporting our artists, not just to perform on stage in the city, but how do we export them outside of Bristol and share that amazing Bristol sound with the rest of the country and the world. And that foundational support, that the stuff that would sit underneath the wider music ecology, and that really is around business resilience, economic development, skills and training, like meaningful career pathways across the music sector, and advocacy for the sector itself. A community benefit model. These proposals have come from 2.5 years worth of consultation with the sector and co-design. It very much has been something that we've sort of come together to the sweet spot in the middle to see how we can, as a city, as a scene, support each other. The CBS model itself, we've discussed lots of different types of models, business models, and the CBS model was chosen because of its democratic governance. It's regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Community ownership is really hard baked into it. That essence of community wealth generation is something that we're really keen to help stimulate. It enables us to also raise social investment, so we're not just reliant on cultural funding, and there are legal safeguards within it, such as asset lock, so people can't just extrapolate the money from it and it not be of benefit to the wider community. It's fair, it's transparent, and it really does support the whole ecosystem. The council's role in how we, in the reason why we need to be the organisation that creates this, really it's about us acting as that leadership role and in being able to kind of move this forward, but we'll be the convener in terms of bringing the people together to co-design through the next stages, and the accountable body for funding applications, for example, with the Combined Authority or with Arts Council England or others. We are also seeking a research partnership with the University of the West of England, and that would enable us to embed both academic evaluation into the process as we go along, enable new academic investigations to happen, but also make sure that we include our student body, who are so vital. As you can tell, this week it's Freshers' Week. All the students are back. You can still feel the vibrancy in the city, and they are certainly part of our music ecology and part of what makes Bristol great. So we've tried to embed that research partnership into our proposals. We did check with the audience when we were pulling these proposals together. We did a customer survey of people that buy tickets that was shared via the working group through the Ticket to the Future feasibility study, we surveyed over 500 people in a couple of weeks. That's a statistically reliable number for the population of the city. 93% of the people that we surveyed would be happy and support a 1% levy that could be reinvested in music in the city. 96% said it wouldn't affect their decision to buy tickets, and a number of them even said it would make them want to buy more because they know that they're looking after something good. The sector confirmed what we were talking about and what we were looking for in terms of those pillars of support, in terms of prioritising that support for venues, local artists, financial sustainability. We have proposed all of the data is in the report. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through it. We've pulled together a roadmap with 13 phases in it that we need to go through to the next stage. These essentially is a bit of a discovery phase, a bit of a delivery phase, and then action and learning. The first part of this is the bit that the council needs to deliver on because an organisation doesn't exist yet. And then once a community benefit society has been established, the second phase of that would be the responsibility of the future organisation to proceed with those phases within the roadmap. I could go into a lot of detail about this, but I'm conscious of time. There are huge benefits to the city in enabling the music industry to support itself and to create a long-standing support system that actually we wouldn't just benefit from next summer, but we benefit from into future generations. What we are proposing with the Bristol Music Fund Community Benefit Society isn't just it's not just a fund, it's not just a way of collecting money. It's a new economic model, and it's really rooted in that essence of community power and enabling the community to look after itself. We know that there are huge cultural, economic, environmental, health and well-being benefits, place-based benefits, place-making of having a thriving music scene. So it is our recommendations for the committee to approve the roadmap to establish a community benefit society, to authorise the council to be able to bid for external funding and related expenditure, approve the council as an accountable body for that external funding, subject to risk mitigation, and to note the intention of bringing a university research partner on board. We would bring through this next stage of discovery, we would bring the decision back to committee before actually establishing and press and go and registering the Community Benefit Society. So the bits that we would discover in the next few phases in the roadmap, we would come back and talk to you before the new legal entity gets set up. I hope that was succinct enough.
Thank you, Carly. That's great. I think this is. I see some hands, but I'm going to abuse chair's privilege and go first this time. This is a good news item. I'm really pleased to see this. I know you've been working hard on it over recent months and probably years. To get it to this point, and I think it is good to see. It's regrettable that the press is no longer in the room to see this. Hopefully, he'll catch up on the webcast and file a report on this item as well. But yeah, I just want to thank you for bringing it. And I did see hands. I didn't see the order of Cam's and Toby's. I think I saw Cam's first and then Toby's. So, and I'll see Tom's as well.
So yeah, I concur with what you just said, Andrew. I think it's a brilliant proposal. I do spend too much of my time geeking out over cooperatives, so I really like the model that you've gone with there. And also, yeah, it's not just about supporting venues, but artists. And I have friends who are, do gigs and whatnot, and they also work 3 or 4 jobs. So it's giving them the platform they need to build their portfolio, their career, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think really good proposal. I just got a clarifying question around there's 1% of ticket sales. how does that work? Is it something we can mandate, or is it something that the venues would opt into, or is it ticket buyers would opt into that? How would that work?
So through the we asked that question during the feasibility study that we published last year. The 1% was decided on by the working group as that sweet spot. It's really easy to work out, 5p, £5 ticket, you know. It would be voluntary for the venue or the event to put the 1% on top of their tickets, but it would be mandatory for the customer to be able to engage in it. And there's similar models of where particular venues might have a restoration levy, or they might have a sustainability levy, and it's mandated to the customer. So we looked at the comparatives.
Thank you, Carly. Toby.
So I concur with everyone else that this is an awesome proposal. I think you know, Bristol's music scene is iconic to many people, and that, you know, anything we can do from within the scene and from outside it to protect it is brilliant. I think the consultation feedback that you got as well is a good example of where, when people can see a well illustrated, tangible benefit to them spending extra money, then they're quite happy to do it. So it does show that people aren't always just opposed to spending more money on things if they can really see the benefit that it will have around them. I think it's a great idea to set it up in a way that this is in the hands of the music community rather than the council. So I understand the council has to be involved at the start to help get the wheels in motion, and as you said, as a convener and a facilitator. The question I have is about, in that phase 2, does the council really step right back as far as it possibly can, and does it need to be involved at all once it's up and running?
So of the next few phases of the roadmap, that's one of the questions that we will ask in terms of what is the council's role in, if any, in that future community benefit society, and that will be revealed through the discovery process that we need to go on to, the preparatory steps that we need to go through next.
Thank you. This is great. As a Labour cooperative councillor, this is right up my street, with it being sort of true to the cooperative model, and you know, I think props to everyone that's been involved. The work on this started under the Labour administration, and it's good to see this is still continuing under the new administration, and that it's been sort of carefully tied back to the work around promoting local wealth building, which I got added into that economic strategy that we've signed off. So I don't have any questions. I think this is excellent. I think we've got a real opportunity to do quite a lot to support grassroots live music in this city through this approach in a really innovative manner, and as a regular gig goer, not as regular as I used to be, and someone who's involved very actively in the Live Music Society at UE. This is really, really awesome. So thank you so much for all your work and the team's work on it.
Thank you, Tom and Fabian.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant. I'm also a Labour co-op councillor, so I think, you know, a cooperative model for this is superb. Hopefully it won't be the only option. Hopefully there'll be other options for cooperative models to be considered in other parts of what we do as a city and as a council. But, you know, it's great. We've got some iconic smaller venues, and it's crucial that they survive. I've seen some great gigs in some of them. So yeah, let's do this. It's great. Well done.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move to a vote now. I've not seen anyone else indicating. We've got one more item to go. So Carly outlined the 6 different aspects of the recommendation, so I'm not going to read all those. I'm just going to move the report. I ask for a seconder. Second. Everyone seconded, but it was Councillor Bartle for the minutes. And to vote, those in favour? Wow, there's that's good. So we now move on to agenda item 10, reprioritisation of capital funding. So this is a report from, I think, Cliff. Patsy's going to move it, sorry. to reprioritise £1 million of funding allocated to the Froome Culvert as set out in the budget, but to transfer 200k of that to emergency investigation works required on Piros Bridge, which I referenced earlier, and reallocate the remaining 800,000 due to pressures emerging in the Underfall sluice repair project, which is another key part of our infrastructure, which is in the process of being repaired, and also to proceed with the urgent works on Piros Bridge due to the condition following the general inspection in July, which has initiated an instant ban on lifting and a restriction stopping loads of over 1 tonne using the bridge. And if you struggle to picture 1 tonne, I'm reliably informed it's 2 police horses with police constables atop, I assume. But I shall move to Patsy.
Thanks, Chair. You just read out my whole introduction. So I'm happy to take any questions, but as the Chair said, it is about reallocating the £1 million currently held in the capital budget from Culvert to 800,000 for Underfall Yard sluices and 200,000 for an inspection on Piros Bridge. We would have to return back to committee to approve any further funding. The inspection would establish exactly what repairs are needed to Piros Bridge and what the costings of that would be. The Underfall Yard sluices is a project that's currently underway in the harbour. The sluice gates control the water levels in the harbour. They're vitally important to the city, and we have received just under £1.7 million worth of funding from the EA, the Environment Agency, and we have got a further application that's yet to be determined into the Environment Agency. But it is prudent, because the work is underway and ongoing at the harbour, to allocate this £800,000 in case we don't get that or we don't get it in time. If we do receive further funding from the Environment Agency, we will repay any monies not spent back to the capital programme. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patsy. I've seen Toby's hand first and then Phoebe.
So I'll go straight to the question. It might be a silly one, but why does the responsibility for this bridge fall under this committee and not transport?
So the bridge isn't a highways asset. It's actually an unadopted bridge. So it's one of the few bridges that we have. Most of the bridges in the harbour are either allocated highways assets or allocated harbour assets. This is actually an orphan bridge. But because it is orphan, then it does fall to us to somebody still has to maintain it. So, yes.
Can I add to that, Patsy? Obviously, at the moment, we have ultimate responsibility for the harbour authority, and part of that is the fact that, as well as being a pedestrian bridge and obviously a vital pedestrian link between Princess Street or Marsh Street. I can't remember the street names there, but you know where it is. As well as being a vital pedestrian link, it is also part of the harbour infrastructure, and because it doesn't raise at the moment, that creates potential problems as and when any toll vehicles need to enter or more specifically leave at St Augustine's Reach. And we do have a toll vehicle in there at the moment that we couldn't get out for servicing or dry docking or whatever, so there is that aspect to it as well.
I assume, though, that the same would apply to Prince Street Bridge and Redcliffe Bridge, which presumably are highways assets?
Yes, but as Patsy explained, for whatever reason, it was never adopted as a highways asset and therefore ultimately falls to us. But yeah, you're right. There is a dual interest when it comes to Prince Street Bridge, Redcliffe Bridge, etc. Fabian, I had you next.
Yeah, I'm concerned, with this sort of either-or approach. I mean, surely, we know torrential rain's a major problem, but flooding is going to get worse, not better. And I am really concerned that we're sort of just, not doing, we're potentially parking something that's equally, potentially just as vital. We don't know how urgent the work that we're putting on ice is. Surely we should be looking for the money from somewhere else and getting everything done, because, we need adequate drainage and flood defences, and I'm not happy with either or.
So we do plan to do the film cover inspections, and I'm just going to read out a statement I've got from the structures team. So that we do need to do the inspection. It is already put into the capital bids for next year, just in case we do spend all of this. So it's a delay rather than either or. The structures team don't have the capacity to do this inspection at the moment anyway, hence why we've chosen Froome Culvert to put forward for reallocation. They haven't got the resources in the team to carry out this inspection at the moment. We would need to bring in the strategic partner to do that. So that's the reason why we're delaying Froome Culvert and recommending that the allocation be put over to Penrose Bridge and Underfall Yard.
Thank you, Patsy. Cam, you were next. Oh, in which case it's Tom, who's busy looking up something on his laptop. Say?
So I don't think the report says that.
No, it doesn't.
That it's going in the 26-27 capital programme. It says it's where there's a bit in the finance advice. Service needs to investigate all fund opportunities, including grants, external funding to limit borrowing costs, as well as further reprofiling, delaying, stopping or scale back on other projects as part of the 26-27 budget setting process. That's the finance advice.
That's what it means. I have put the capital bid in for this. The capital bid is in the capital programme for 26-27.
Okay, so
sorry if that's not clear.
I don't understand why it's not doesn't just say this will be allocated in the 26-27.
I can't say it's been allocated. We're still at the process of putting bids in, so we submit all of our capital bids, and as part of the budget setting process, those that are allocated funding get approved.
So it's not been so you've put in a bid as an officer for it to go in the 26-27 budget, but at the moment it is not allocated in the 26-27 budget. What we're being asked to do today is to sign off moving this money for the two purposes specified under full sluice gates and the Penrose Bridge. I don't dispute that those two things are really important, right? I don't dispute that. My concern, and like Councillor Breckles, is where that money is being taken from for something that is high risk and is to carry out assessment work to understand the extent of the potential issues. And at the moment, we don't know the issues. We don't know if they're low risk, medium risk, high risk, very high risk. And that's what we're really concerned about. So I think on the basis of what the paper that is in front of us and the basis that that money is not yet allocated, noting a bid has gone in, I'll be interested to understand kind of where in the capital programme it's going to go, what's either coming out or what we're going to have to sell more assets to fund it. We'll be abstaining on this today because we understand the need for what you need to do. It's where it's coming from that I have a concern about from a pot that is not at the moment replaced.
Okay.
So just to reassure, the reason we have chosen is I work, the structures team falls within management of place as well, so I have discussed this with the experts in the structures team, and it's not deemed, there's no immediate need to do the Froome Culvert inspection. However, there is an immediate need to do Penrose Bridge and to do Underfall Yard sluices, and the risk is far higher from not completing those two pieces of work than it is of not doing Froome Culvert inspection.
I understand. I think it's the risk you can't categorically rule out. There aren't urgent works required around the culvert, and that's my concern. So acknowledge what you need to do that you see as more of a priority. Our concern is that this should also be progressing at a bit of a quicker pace as well, and we're concerned about it now not, and that there's no funding currently allocated, noting that you've put a bid in. So we'll be abstaining on the paper.
And on that note, I'll move to the vote. So the recommendation, which I have now tidied away, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the recommendation is that the committee approves the reallocation of capital funding of 1 million from Froome Culvert to the Underfall Yard sluices and Penrose Bridge as outlined in the report, authorises the Executive Director of Growth and Regen in consultation with the Chair of Economy and Skills to both modify as appropriate the existing contract in connection with the additional requirements for the Underfall Yard sluices, and to procure the necessary contract for the works to Piros Bridge in line with the maximum budget envelopes outlined in this report, and authorises the Executive Director of Growth and Regen to make any subsequent modifications to these contracts as may be necessary while staying within the maximum budget envelope outlined in this report. So can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. So all those in favour indicate, please. That's 4. All those against? And all those abstaining. So that's 4 for, 3 abstentions. So that is carried. And that brings us to a close of the agenda. Thank you very much to everyone. I know it's been at times a tricky meeting to chair. Might well have been tricky for some members as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to Ben for sticking with it in the public gallery to the end. You get a prize. Don't know what the prize is, but you get a prize, and I'll probably see you tomorrow at Harbour Committee. And thank you to all the officers as well.
Thank you, Chair.